Welcome to the Independent Characters, episode 193. This is Carl.
This is Adon.
And this is Justin.
And this episode, we are going to be going over something I'm actually very excited for this episode. I was telling Adon. We're going to be covering, the title of the episode is Resurrection, Using Older Warhammer 40K Material. The idea kind of came to me as a while ago as we switched editions and that kind of thing.
Right.
And even as this new Space Marine Codex came out, people were like, oh, my old Codex is wasted now. And yeah, for the most part it is. But
well, the rules section is.
Right. But there are other things we can kind of delve into where it's maybe not worthless anymore. But we've got some ideas on, because I had a massive amount of 7th edition and 6th edition stuff at this point. And that was a time where I was buying every Codex that came out before they sent them. And now they send them to us, but then I distribute them to whoever our players are that are playing that already. Right. So anyway, so we're going to delve into kind of ideas for refreshing older material and thoughts that may spur ideas for you to take this material, use it, and get more life out of it. So
great.
There you go. Couple announcements before we get started. The show, this episode, is sponsored by Rich White.
Thank you, Mr. White.
I've made a slight adjustment here. I don't know actually for a fact, I could go look, that Rich is a Patreon subscriber. But the reason I picked Rich is because recently I posted on the Facebook group that I was looking for some Inquisitor supplements.
That's support. That is support.
And he didn't send me those supplements I was looking for. Another person actually had PDFs of them and said, hey, do you want to look at them? These are things that are well out of print at this point. But Rich actually sent me a copy of the rule book as well as the annual for 2002 for it, unasked.
Oh, right.
It just arrived at my work because I think he had the address from the donation stuff. Rich is a big fan of the show.
Yeah.
And so this actually really helps us kind of launch that episode a little bit.
Right. Cool. Well, that's support.
Yeah, I agree.
Support.
I agree.
Yeah.
So, and this is actually the fact that he sent me the annual. This is the one book I was really looking for. There was an opportunity for me to buy it, and I didn't. Yeah. And I've been kicking myself ever since. So, thank you very much, Rich. Appreciate your support.
You can put the boots away.
The what?
You were kicking yourself.
You
put the boots away.
Well, I kind of just wear tennis shoes. So, anyway,
softer
let's move into Elite Choice. Adon, why don't you go first?
Yeah. So interesting. I was looking. It kind of was striking me over the last couple of weeks, all the people just doing like home hammer or
lunch hammer,
doing all kinds of just using whatever.
I see it on Reddit all the time called poor hammer, which is where they'll take various things just to make terrain. Yeah, books, but some guys make pretty creative terrain out of just
whatever's laying around. Yeah. And people are playing with their kids for the first time and just stuff like that. I gave a really warm feeling to my heart. But the name I want to call out is Shane McDaniel. Mm-hmm. Shane McDaniel's part of a group of Texas players with John and those guys, and they
John Troutman.
Yeah, he was actually the 101 class I taught out there.
Right. Yeah.
Really good guy.
And they
Which
did
one?
Shane
101.
No, Shane or John.
Shane.
Yes. I think they both were.
And I don't know about John.
Troutman. Yep.
I don't know about John being a good guy.
Yeah,
but Shane's probably a good guy.
Yeah, Shane's probably a good guy.
And that Gunner guy. Ooh, boy, man. I love you, Gunner. I like Gunner. I enjoy Gunner.
Gunner's a good dude. All right.
Back to your story. Sorry.
So that's okay.
We've been interrupting you all day.
We've been doing this. Yeah. So he posted kind of a link to a Facebook page for this resort, the Coral Palms Retreat, which is a place where like folks go and make quilts and do all kinds of like knitting circle kind of stuff.
Okay.
Well, these guys went there because, hey, it's a place that celebrates crafting. And so they had kind of a little retreat there with their Warhammer stuff. And the folks at the retreat were like, this is cool. And they posted this Facebook post saying, look at all this cool crafting these guys do. And they had like the Ghostbusters model. They were doing other scale models as well. But they were playing 40K.
Yeah.
And the folks at the retreat seemed to really get a kick out of finally realizing, how crafty, how much, artistic talent and skill goes into doing this stuff, which is why I can't do it, because it takes talent. But anyway, I really thought that was cool that they posted that on their Facebook page for all the world to see, and then Shane posted it on the group, and so that's my choice.
Nice.
We need to have a self-deprecation contest between Adon and Doug I think, at this point.
Well, no, but Doug actually does paint well.
He paints okay.
Doug paints
really well.
And
so do you.
Well. But I know what Doug is saying. Like, he's trying to get...
You're your own worst critic.
He's trying to get his stuff up to a level, like when you look at a photo of a really high-end model, he's trying to get his stuff up to that level. He doesn't feel it's up to that level. And maybe it isn't. Like, maybe there's not like the shading and gradation in a face or you know, but dude, his stuff looks good.
It always looks
great.
good.
It looks good. He's so too critical. Anyway, Justin.
So this is always such a hard pick for me going through this. I swear I sit
It's hard
there
to pick one
at the community page for like an hour and a half. Like, so there's a lot of good picks, but I had to go with Peter Shaw was the one that jumped out to me, and he had some really beautiful Space Wolf Primaris Hellblasters.
Yep.
And just
speaking of good-looking faces on models,
really well done. Like the contrast was there, the damage, the chip damaging, and what dawned on me, which was huge about this, and I've seen this a lot on the community page where there's a lot of long-time lurkers, first-time posters. You know, don't be embarrassed or anything. Even people that maybe they look at stuff that's on there and they're a little intimidated by it. Mm-hmm. Right. I would say openly, like, post pictures of your stuff, but give that caveat that advice welcomed, you know, because I always see things, and you know, not that I'm the best painter in the world, but I always see things. I'm like, man, I could give feedback on that, but I don't want to insult somebody.
It's not about being the best painter in the world.
It isn't,
but it is about sharing what you know. You know, when Mason was over here, he was asking. Mason is a 12-year-old kid of my wife's friend who's getting into 40K. We've talked about.
We all know Mason. Yeah, he's a good guy.
Dark Angels. I was explaining how washes work, and I showed him with like an old model that I had painted, and I had two that were the same. And I said, now watch as I put wash on this model, what happens? And then he could see the difference in me. So it's just about sharing what you know. I'm not the best. I'm not as good a painter as you are, but I could elevate his painting.
Exactly. But again, like my take on it is if somebody doesn't ask for critique, it's hard for me
to critique, to
always do that kind of good sandwich, and you don't feel like that's your place.
Because you don't want, like, if they're posting something up and they're very proud of it, great. I mean, that's fine, you know, but you're right. Unless they ask for, because you're like, I always approach it carefully. I'm always like, you know, if you want some advice, I know how you could maybe elevate that just a little bit very easily.
And that's what always drives me crazy is I'll look at a picture of a model. I'm like, dude, if you just like bring that highlight up one more level, or one more little pin wash, or whatever the case may be, or black rim that base for the love of God, Conrad.
Brown is fine.
I love you, buddy.
Drill your barrels,
Jeff. You know. But our friends,
black dot will work.
I'm gonna bring my Tamiya drill
and drill them all out
while
he's sleeping.
To use the restroom.
Drill all those barrels,
and do them all slightly off center.
I'm gonna do it so it like rips open the side of the barrel.
Yeah,
how much of that sucks.
But I guess the main point is being like, don't be a long time lurker, first time poster. Like if you're in the community page, I love seeing what people have to offer, and I was just blown away by those Space Wolves. Everything on them was fantastic, and I can't wait to see more pictures of your army.
Here's the other thing I would say, like, this is the kind of community where you can post that and ask for help, and people will help.
Yes.
Like, it is very supportive in that aspect. So, yeah, I agree with you.
And anybody 100%. Who applies with Get Good, I slam him in the face with a hammer.
They're very close to getting kicked
that
or something like that.
Clean your mold lines. On to you, Carl.
You know what the worst is, though, is when you paint something and then you realize I missed this mold line, and it's so evident. You're like, well, maybe I'll just ignore it. Like, I got to start over.
Well, the worst is when you see a model that's like beautifully painted on a forum or something
with like
mold line. Big flash lines. Like they didn't even clean anything.
Yeah.
It's like,
you're supposed to clean them.
Okay. So anyway,
you should.
Mine was Jason. I'm gonna struggle with this last name. Motif.
It's Masters of the Forge. It's an abbreviation.
Is that what it is?
Yes.
I didn't realize that's who that is.
Yes.
I thought that was his last name.
No.
Oh, I want to pick a different one.
Motif.
I seriously thought that was his last name.
No.
Now I get. I know. You know, it'd be like me, Carl ICs.
Yeah.
People be all Carl X.
X.
All right. Anyway, Jason from Masters of the Forge. I'm an idiot. And his Zone Mortalis.
You seriously didn't know that?
No, I didn't. I seriously thought this was his last name. Like I just, sometimes you don't put two and two together. Dude.
Even when he posts a link to his show?
Adon.
Okay.
First off,
Never mind.
there's 4,900 members in our Facebook group at the
Actually, I
moment.
think it's
Don,
62.
he's going to fire us again.
Oh, sorry.
Shut up.
Sorry.
Yeah, listen, buddy.
I'm going to get a call from HR again.
Shell, be our HR rep.
Okay. Sorry.
Okay, so Jason from Masters of the Forge. I could edit this out and make myself sound a lot smarter.
You could.
But I'm more committed than that.
You see the humility?
He did. He really. I didn't know. I know now. Okay. My mind has been blown. He did a Zone Mortalis board, a 4x4 Zone Mortalis board. And having given up on painting mine and
You gave it to Brian, right?
commission that to Brian, I can totally appreciate the mind-numbing nature of painting this thing. And I have a couple pictures in our show notes. But he did all the detail work on
all the
control
panels. Yeah.
and everything. This is a work of love because it is mind-numbing. It takes a lot of time.
You know what? I don't see any freehand graffiti, though. I mean, it's kind of...
Yeah, well, he did. It's probably because the Motive clan doesn't...
I would be curious though if he did that solely by himself, or if he recruited some help. You know what I mean? That's the kind of project.
Yeah.
If I was going to embark on it,
Yeah.
especially because I'm cheap, I would just bribe some friends with beer.
We did talk
and meat.
about doing that here
That's right,
with
yeah.
Ryan, and
But
finally
he gives it his own motif.
Oh my god, I totally deserve that. Moving on.
Somebody's going to get there coming to you live from the Astronomicon from this conversation, I'm sure. Moving along.
All right, I think that's it for our
Elite
choice. Man, you totally throw me off now. Let's do this. Let's take a short break. We're gonna come right back, and then we'll jump into other mistakes that Carl's gonna make.
Boom.
Be right back.
Hey, this is Big Nasty B from Life After the Cover Safe, and I'm at a mall talking to strangers about Table War. Table War develops some of the most innovative products for the miniature wargaming and hobby industry.
And I develop pictures.
That's great. They develop things like the Fat Mat.
Who's Matt, and why is he so fat?
Well, first off, Mat is not a person. The Fat Mat is a tabletop gaming surface, and with over 40 different designs, Table War's Fat Mat has become a community standard.
I got a Surface Pro. It's like 10 inches. By the way, I'm meeting my friend Simbon. Do you know what that is?
No, but I do want to tell you about the Table War Tower case line.
Oh man, towers are so huge.
Well, it's not that kind of tower. It's the original modular, all-in-one display, storage, and transport system for all your tabletop miniatures.
Wow, you're really smart. What's your relationship status?
Well, it's complicated, but you know what isn't complicated?
Chili dogs.
This is true, but also the Macromat.
Oh geez, not that guy again.
The Macromat is a one-of-a-kind, innovative photography backdrop, perfect for collectibles, hobby miniatures, and small works of art. Its durability, portability, and functionality in one inexpensive product.
I wasn't paying attention to what you just said, but do you validate parking?
No, I do not. But if you want more information, head over to tablewar.com and check them out.
All right, and we're back, and we're going to jump into a little bit of hobby progress here.
Nice.
It's a little bit on my case. I finally finished printing my cathedral, and I've bought tea lights so that I can light it up once I get.
It looks amazing.
Once I get the
the tea
stained
lights
glass
are on,
windows.
right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I got 100 of them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so much brighter in here.
Oh, yeah. So I also got the Astronomicon. I had an electrician finally
Sorry, I jumped ahead. I heard
come
tea
out
lights
and provide lighting in here. And
Nice.
because it did used to get, the Astronomicon was kind of dim
Yes.
because it was right the
Right
galaxy
before the-
had been ripped in
That's
half.
right. The
Yeah.
yeah.
The light of the Emperor is back.
And when it would
is.
become night here, it got a little, you kind of, how many pips are on that die?
Right, yeah.
But now, not a problem. It is full on daylight in here now all the time. So, yeah, I'm pretty happy.
Now
with it.
they're all manual pull.
You can turn them off all
All
individually.
right, we'll
if
talk.
you
We'll
want.
get some Savant in here, and you can control it all from your phone.
Oh, that would be sweet.
Oh,
I know a guy.
Okay. All right. I'm down with that because I'm actually looking into a bunch of home automation stuff. But
nice.
other than that, I have absolutely not done much in the way of hobby progress. I've just been slammed the last couple
It
of
happens.
weeks. Yeah.
But that being said, that cathedral, that thing looks.
I mean, honestly, it didn't require much work on my part. It was just printing
Sure.
out.
Well, it's funny. When I got here,
Go ahead,
I'm sorry.
go ahead.
I was gonna say when I got here, I was kind of like, "Hey, Shell, the printer's not running."
I know.
She goes, "I think he's confused about what to do next."
Or it looks like a bunch of empty spools over there.
There is a bunch
more ammo.
I have a full one still. But no, I need to do some bridges.
Yeah.
And a couple other
some
city pieces
and some ruin sections for the cathedrals. You can switch them out.
And some ruin sections. Yeah. So, but man,
I think it's so cool.
I'm super excited to paint it, and I'm super excited to get the windows in it and stuff. Yeah. So I think I'm gonna do the roof like kind of a burgundy reddish color.
Oh yeah.
With the rest of it being that kind of tan that I did my other ruins of. And I think those colors will look really good.
Although, can I make a suggestion?
Yeah, sure.
Do the roof more like a gold or a copper color with a red rust.
That patina.
Like a really runny red rust all over it.
That's a good idea.
Verdigris.
Verdigris. Oh, okay.
Yes, it's silent. It's French.
Motif.
Chitinous verdigris.
It's
Okay.
It's its own motif.
Yeah, that would look pretty cool too.
Yeah.
That would look pretty cool. That's actually a pretty good idea. It's just a lot of metallic.
Well, don't do it with metallic.
It's called an airbrush.
No, I'm not saying.
But don't
that
do
I
it with
couldn't
metallic.
Do it. How are you going to do bronze with?
Well, no, you just use that color palette, and then you kind of run the rust color over the top, so it's like it's dulled out the metal.
That'll be the perfect example.
If you look at copper that's been
I know
totally
I know what you're
corroded
saying.
out, it doesn't look.
Let me think about it, because I've kind of got my mind set on this red thing, but that's not a bad idea. I know what you're talking about now. I know exactly what you're.
It'd be great to learn your oil washing too on.
That is true.
Yeah,
that is true.
Talk about a lot of stuff you can experiment with.
That's a lot of oil washing on the thing. Okay. Anyway, so that's me. Haven't done a whole lot. Don, you.
So I've been listening. I listen to Audible quite a bit.
Yep.
And the latest 40K stuff I've been listening to on Audible because I finally got tired of hearing Only the Faithful over and over. Realm War book number 5. But anyway, Shadow Masters, Masters of the First.
That's funny.
Short stories. What?
Motif. Masters of the First.
Masters of yes. Masters of the First. So those are both short stories.
Okay.
They're like $3.99 on Audible or something like that. Yeah. $2.99. So those are fun little lessons. And then Titan Death.
Now, what did you think of Titan Death?
Okay.
Oh, really? You weren't that impressed?
No, I had to keep starting and stopping, and it was like, ugh.
Oh, I really enjoyed Titan Death.
It's interesting because I felt like the characters all had very predictable arcs. I felt like the story was very predictable. I felt like the culmination near the end was, the whole thing was like, okay, and here's the part where this happens, then there it happens. Oh. And the narrators for these books, Jonathan Keeble and I can't remember the other guy's name, who's real common. They're really good, and they're really good for battle sequences, but when they're doing stuff that's not that, more the character vein, they still sound like something's going to happen really dramatic in just a few moments. And their voice it's still very dramatic. It's like, okay, guy, come on.
I really enjoyed Titan
This is supposed to be like the little lull between the battles kind of
thing. I will agree with you that I felt like narratively, like I knew where it was going each step. Yeah. Like there was no huge surprise to me at any point.
But I thought the concept, the description of the Titans and how they operate and how the different people inside of it interact, and I thought all that stuff was very interesting. I thought getting kind of the literal inside view of how the Titans operate and how they
not only
organized.
That, how the house changed hands and like I thought all that was fascinating actually.
Yeah, and the way that I don't want to give too much away, but there's a ceremony that happens with the Traitor Legion.
Yep.
I thought, okay, that's kind of interesting how that all happens, and it kind of gives you an insight to how the authors interpret what the sculptors had done with the Chaos Knights.
Yeah,
because the sculptors come up with stuff,
or Chaos Titans.
Chaos Titans, yeah. The sculptors come up with stuff they think is cool.
Yeah.
They don't do it based on what the authors write.
Right.
And then the authors write stuff to explain.
Yeah, sure. They all feed off each other.
Right. But like, I'm sure, just based on what I know and would have learned in this time of doing this stuff, the guys who created the first Chaos Titans in the artwork and the sculpting, they weren't talking to nobody. No. They just thought, this is cool.
Yeah, for sure.
And so the way he described how that comes to be, yes, I thought that was interesting. But
overall, not your favorite book.
Not my favorite book.
Okay. I liked all the destruction in it. I liked the part where the guy shoots the other guy.
Yeah.
That was good.
And he blew up in many pieces.
Lots of Titans were blowing up.
When that blew up, it was kind of cool. And I liked it.
There actually is this scene where they're kind of describing it from high view. Like I don't remember if they're looking out I think they're looking at a Thunderhawk or Stormbird or something, and they can see all the Titans down below fighting and like exploding and stuff. And
it's like watching a couple tables of Adeptus Ticantus.
It was pretty awesome though.
Nice.
Yeah. I liked it more than you did, I think, but that's a very fair assessment, I think.
Yeah. Got the new Space Marine Codex.
Yep.
And cards and all that kind of stuff.
Book is so good. Oh, it's so good.
Yeah. And
I'm scared actually of Space Marines for the first time since second edition.
And I boxed up 148 Adeptus Sororitas in their little foam burritos and paid for all the shipping and everything, and put them in a box to go to Sri Lanka for painted figs. And it actually took an inordinate amount of time to actually do all that organization and figuring out. So what I did was I sat down and put together a brigade list. What would a brigade list look like, and how many models of each type do I actually need to do that? And I had never actually sat down and done that. I was just buying sisters like they were going out of style every chance I got. Oh, it's a good deal. I'll buy
them.
Well, yeah, they
never went out of style, but they were going out of print.
Right, yeah. So I was just, I'd see a good deal, I'd pick one up, whatever. Oh, a heavy flamer, I don't have enough of those, so I'd pick one up. Anyway, so I sat down, put together a whole brigade list, figured out how many models I actually needed for that, and then looked at how many I already had painted, because I'd paid for some to be painted already. And then that kind of decided, there's 148 more that I need to send out. And as a result, I actually have more than I needed. So I actually have close to 40, I think, of just regular Bolter sisters that I'm going to be selling off now. If anybody's going to buy them at this point.
Better sell them quick.
Yeah, if anybody's going to.
Did you see that new Hospitaller?
So good.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Buddy, those sculpts
so
are
good.
so good.
They're very nice. And that one in particular, people are going to be using it as bits for other things.
For sure.
And that base is going to be...
Base is beautiful.
So many chaos objectives are going to have that base.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I'm going to be... And there's people who are like retro fans.
Sure, absolutely.
And they'll want the Metal Sisters.
Yeah,
so I'm going to be selling a bunch of those off. Also, the other thing I did was... So the heavy weapons girls have specific backpacks for those weapons. Like the Flamers, Meltas, and Storm Bolters do not, but the heavy Flamers, heavy Bolters, multi-Meltas do.
Different ammo feeds or whatnot.
Different ammo feeds. Well, those backpacks are like gold. You can't really find them. And even though I know people who cast stuff, and I could probably have it done, I didn't want to do that and go through the hassle of that. So what I did was maxmini.eu has these really custom Gothic backpacks, and it's a set of 3 different ones. So Melta, Flamer, Bolter. So perfect. I just picked which ones were which.
Oh, nice.
And one of them actually has like 2 braziers on either side of it. So, it's obviously that's the Flamer. And so I packed up enough of those backpacks for each of those special heavy weapons, so that they'll be easy to see in the squad, right? Because a lot of times I'll run Flamer, Melta, Storm Bolter in a basic sister squad. And I'm always trying to figure, where's the Flamer? Well,
that's a good like hobby tip too for people that have squads. Like for example, my Reaver jet bikes. Like, how do I distinguish the guy with the blaster that's underneath the cowl? You know,
you can't see it
in
from up
game.
top.
It's always good to kind of have that in the back of your mind, whether to put like a streamer off of them or paint a different design,
a different stripe on it,
something, so it's easy to recognize.
Right? Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And what I used to do is I used to make the rim a different color, and that made people go nuts.
Yeah, because it's not black. Yeah.
Right. So
that new Space Marine book, let's talk about that for just a second.
Let's.
One of the things I like about it, aside from it is quite strong, one of the things I really like about it, though, is the flexibility for creating like your own chapter stuff.
I'm so glad they brought that back.
Yeah, especially because now, running Minotaurs, it's like, okay, I can...
You can do whatever you want to do.
However, I can make them however I want, since I don't think that we're going to see anytime soon, like some Minotaurs rules coming out of
you read their lore and you say
just use this.
This makes sense.
Yep. Yeah. So,
or you say, I think this is the most competitive build, or whatever.
That was a fun book to play test. Like just going through it was just, this is going to change.
Now
things.
it's going to be huge. I think there are more layers of complication to it, and it is not as simple as it used to be.
Oh no.
Oh, it's not. But I think the combinations you can do and the damage output from them now, like I think Marines are literally scary again.
And they should.
And I love that you have to have an all Marine army to take advantage of a lot of the rules.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm okay. You want to do a soup army? Cool, but there should be a drawback, and it's cool. It's almost like a peak, possibly.
I don't know. There should be a drawback to doing that, as there should be a benefit,
a reward to doing it.
The other thing, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because
okay.
I mean, I think soup will still be a thing.
I think so.
but
sure.
probably
There's just so many combinations people can do that that you don't contemplate as you're building the whole thing, and then all of a sudden somebody's like, oh, this with this. Like I saw somebody talking about a salamanders.
Right. Yes, that was a Spiky Bits post too.
Did like a crazy amount of course it was doing a crazy amount of damage, and I'm like, oh, okay, well that's interesting.
And it's kind of situational.
You know what's really funny is we were just talking about drop pods last episode, and
Yeah.
hey, one or two of those are going to be seeing most tables, at least one.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure. As
They're
an
pretty
end game drop down, just to sit on an objective, get line breaker,
and the fact that you can now, because they ignore the tactical reserves rule.
yes,
You can bring them in turn 1
or turn 5 or whatever.
turn 5 or whatever. Yeah, so it
is
cool.
Unfortunately,
be-
sold all mine off.
All your
I
drop
didn't.
pods,
All of them.
all of them.
Sold them with that night.
Well, you might have to buy
well,
one.
actually, I have some already assembled.
There you go.
But
You'll be fine.
all the kits I had tons of kits.
I think it would be kind of cool though. Also, and I think we saw this in White Dwarf. It'd be kind of cool to say, hey, so and so is building a Minotaur's army. Here are the chapter tactics that he chose and why.
Agreed. I think that'd be very interesting.
It's so rich for content for their community.
They are starting
site.
to show like, look at this guy's
Yes.
army and look at this guy's army.
Yeah.
A couple
White
of those.
Dwarf is
Yeah.
getting better and better. Like,
Well,
it
and the
really
community
is.
site has some videos about guys who did their own custom chapters.
Yep.
And so, really cool stuff.
All right, Justin.
So for me, not a whole lot of 40K progress. Sadly, I'm still in my prep mode for Nova. I'm getting my syllabus down for my sculpting classes and whatnot. But I did manage to get a bunch of AOS stuff that we'll tune into a different channel and go over.
Yes.
I managed to paint up because I bought a bunch of AOS terrain. This ties into 40K. Hear me out. So I painted like a bunch of AOS terrain, and looking at it when it was all set up
Is it the
on
new
my
stuff?
board.
No, I saw what you painted.
Yeah, so it's basically all the
gate things and
a couple gate things, but a lot of ruins.
yeah,
Right.
And those could really easily transition in as like almost like a Eldar Maiden world or something.
Yeah.
for sure.
But
Well, they invade all
God
kinds
bless
of
the
different worlds.
airbrush.
Oh,
Yeah.
And actually,
doing terrain.
dude, I used
So
a bunch.
easy.
I went to all my like old Minotaur paints that I had sitting there because I didn't want to burn a bunch of
Expensive
Yeah,
paints.
so I'm like all these Minotaur paints that Doug gave me. I'm like burn through that one and not feel guilty. But
That and the inks just make painting terrain super easy.
that the Dale Rowney olive green. I mixed that with a little burnt umber to like give it the dirty mossy towards
Yeah.
the bottom half of the buildings.
Yeah.
So it ties in really
That's a
well.
nice.
I put some of that on a
combination.
salad. It was really good.
Dirty moss.
burnt olive umber salad.
Yeah.
Yum. But other than that, it's been a lot of Blood Bowl, Blitz Bowl kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But I did go back to my
Have you played any Blitz Bowl yet?
yeah.
It's fun. huh?
Yeah. Played a couple games. I love that game.
Yeah.
I'm actually painting up the teams from it right now.
Nice.
And I haven't painted an orc since I was like,
That was actually
12.
the first army I painted because I was just like,
yeah.
I always wanted to paint orcs, but I really don't want to paint orcs.
Sure.
You know, like-
And I'm painting humans. Like,
I'm
when do
painting
I paint
5
humans
orcs.
that are
Okay.
covered in spikes, And I'm just painting them like the box art,
You
yellow and red.
You
what I
usually
do.
only paint humans that are on spikes. On
Right.
some Incubi's. Right.
Exactly. Yeah. But it did feel good to go back to the chrome. I just used the chrome for all this stuff.
Yeah, the
And I was like,
Badger
I don't
chrome.
want to use my class brush, my Harder and Steenbecks. I'm just gonna use this chrome. I'm like, this thing, you could just shoot gravel
workhorse.
through it.
Yeah.
It is such Anthony actually I think gave it to me at one point a few years back. I love that thing. I still
Yeah, it's a good. It's
Love
a
it.
good.
It's a workhorse brush for doing base coating. It's great for that.
Oh,
I've got all my
shoot gravel through it, man.
my Nova army packed up in those 2 KR cases right there, except for my Lord of Change. I'm not sure how to transport him. He's a big wing,
Yeah.
We can talk. I might have room in my class
No,
bag.
I think I've got a So I had this thing I brought my Warlord Titan or Warhound Titan in one time,
Right.
and so people were posting on the forum. Somebody bought KR stuff, and they're like, "What do I do with all these extra foam that I pulled out?"
Right.
I
Use them
get a
as-
little plastic
yep,
tub. I
yep.
set this thing and use it to support and
Right.
and protect that thing, and then just take it with me.
Yeah, I use
So-
it to fill in gaps here and there so things don't slide around.
exactly.
Yeah.
I use like I kind of do like a secret carry on. Like I have my backpack, and
a fanny pack
another bag
with a Lord of Change
That's
in
a
it.
Don.
Okay.
And then,
Battle pouch with a Lord of Change in it.
and then
He's wearing one right now.
and I
Hot
usually
damn.
sneak in like another little thing because
Yeah.
Sure.
but it doesn't take up much room.
Well, that stuff's also really good to keep for sponge weathering.
Yeah, for sure.
So don't throw that away.
All right, games played. So I had a 2,000 point game against Josh using my 1,000 Suns Chaos Demons. I was in each army. Josh brought his Necrons, and what a great game that was when we recorded. I think
it was last recording.
Yeah, we had started to play,
right,
and then I think we got one round in, and then we recorded, and then we played for the rest of the evening. I ended up I could not break that like huge blob of Necron warriors that kept coming back. But I did try a couple interesting things with the army. I would say it's not the most powerful army. There's a lot more things I could do that would be way more powerful. I include models like the Lord of Change that I was just talking about because he looks cool, and I've got him fully painted. I want him on the table, and I put like the what's his name, the Changeling near him, so that he can give him that 6-up, feel no pain type thing. So I was just playing with a few ideas. I got to change out a few of the psychic powers I chose. Like they weren't kind of really doing it for me.
And this was all demons, right?
No, was it
Rubricate?
It was half Rubricate and Thousand Suns and half demon. So it gave me a lot of command points at 2,000 points.
It just didn't have that punch you were looking for.
No, well, it was okay on the punch side. It was fun. It was fun to play. One of the things I did that was really interesting, and I was talking to Jody about this, was we were talking about pink horrors and then paying for blue horrors and brimstone horrors. And
at least one.
Who would pay for those, right?
Yeah.
But it's actually pretty amazing in some ways, especially going to the blue horror level from the pink horror level, because effectively, those are 2 wound models that you're paying for now.
Sure.
Like they're 2 blue horrors for when it splits, you're automatically
right.
Now, one of the complications comes when you have to make morale tests because you're taking like a bunch of wounds, you spawn a bunch of blue horrors, and then you take morale tests, right? And then you're removing some of the blue horrors from the morale tests. Unless I'm
just
doing
hoping you roll a 1.
Or hoping you roll a 1 and
the
get
warp blinks.
But that only occurs if you have like a specific, you have to have your pink horror with that staff for that.
Right.
In order to get the reality blinks thing.
With the icon?
Yeah. And the problem is if
or you spend the command points.
Or you spend
there
the 2.
There is a command point. That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. So anyway, it's a fun list to play. What I'm saying is getting pink horrors off of an objective is not easy. Like it took his entire army firing at, what was, I think, 10 pink horrors splitting into 20
when the 4-ups are with you, they're with you.
Yeah. And he eventually did it, but it took like everything else.
And while he was doing that, he wasn't shooting at other stuff.
Right. Exactly. So, I wouldn't call it like there's a lot of punch to it, but it is fun to play. And I think it's fun to play against because you're killing like a lot of stuff.
That's all that matters.
Yeah. Yeah. So, still a lot of psychic goodness in there. So it's fun. Anyway, so I'm playing with a few ideas, but I packed it all up. My list is ready for Nova. And, I'm ready to go.
So you're taking T-Suns and Demons.
Yep.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yep.
Fun stuff.
And
I'm bringing
enough Thousand Suns too that like I can play different kill team stuff and
point game
different.
Yeah,
because I'm playing on that narrative event, so I can even change some stuff up as I go.
Right.
If I decide I want to change this.
I think that's my plan, is to bring a small 40K contingent because my Saturday is pretty open.
Cool.
Bring a small 40K detachment, maybe some Blitzball, and see what happens.
Nice. Nice. All right. Adon, what about you?
You got a game in, sir.
Yes, I did. So I've been playing a lot since I've been in
retired
Arizona
mode.
It actually is a very rich gaming community there.
Yeah, it sounds like.
And it's been a lot of fun. And because so many places are close to me, one of the things about the Bay Area is there's lots of great game stores, but I'd have to drive like an hour to this one and an hour and a half to that one and 2 hours to the other one.
And the traffic around here is
depending
so
on
nice.
when the traffic is, it could be double that, right? So
how's the traffic out there?
Well, here's the thing, is that where I'm located and where these 3 or 4 stores are around me, even if you're in rush hour traffic, it's not very long at all.
Nice.
And so it's great. And I'm driving 15, 20 minutes. I could be at any one of 3 or 4 stores.
Wow.
And so it's like, okay, who's playing Warcry today? Who's playing Age of Sigmar today? And
so do you go and you like check and see what's going on in each store?
Yeah, that's kind of the hard part, is trying to keep it all straight about who's scheduling what. And
right.
The other
you have a Kanban board for it, for your gaming?
I don't. I just use a Google Calendar. But the thing that's weird, that's a new experience for me out there, is that it seems like every store is using a different chat app.
Oh, are they?
Basecamp and Team Snap and everybody's...
Is Team Snap even a thing?
Yeah, it's a thing.
Oh.
Everybody's
not just using Discord?
No,
they would.
And another one, and Discord is the Arizona general one, has Discord. It says it's like all these notifications.
track
Okay, which
of,
store is this and who's doing that? Oh. Anyway.
Start convincing them all to go to Discord.
Yeah, well, no, because then they can't control who's in it and they can't control the information that's there. And one store doesn't want another store advertising their events in their...
So, okay.
Anyway.
Team Snap, huh?
Yeah, Team Snap. Warhammer Chandler uses Team Snap.
Okay.
Yes. Hi, Jason. So played a bunch of Warcry. That's not this show, so we'll let that go. But one of the things that I decided to jump into is the store that's closest to my house. I talked about it, Baxter's. I actually posted pictures of this place on the IC's.
Is that the one with the mirror wall?
Yeah.
They made it look like twice as big as it was, and they were like, "Oh, that's a mirror. Never mind."
Yeah. So this guy actually,
it's still good size though.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
It just looked massive.
This guy actually started life as a cop in LA at one point.
Hey, you told us.
Yeah. So anyway, they have a guy who's running. Robert and Devo firefighters are running this league there, and this is, I guess, the second season of the league. And they run it as a 2,000 point ITC league. So the first iteration of the league before I got there, they were doing weekly. You had to meet up with your opponent weekly to do your game. They don't do it on a specific day or a specific night because
just you had to meet them at some
during
point.
the week, right?
That offers quite a bit.
On Monday they post the pairings. You got to get a hold of your opponent. The game has to be played at the store.
Yeah, and
you do your thing. They found out it was really hard to get everybody to get their games in that way. So this time they're doing 2-week period to get your game in. So a lot of people are doing it in the first few days, but still it's good. It gives you a lot of flexibility. It's still the tail end of summer. A lot of people are on vacation.
Yep.
It works out pretty well. So I got paired up. So I decided I'm going to do this. I'm going to try this thing. I'm going to jump into a league. I very rarely go to other people's scheduled events, and so it's kind of that's kind of cool, Go to a 3-round event, not have to be. Yeah. That's kind of neat. So I decided, okay, I'm going to do this. And they'll let you can change your list, but it has to stay the same faction.
Okay.
Cool.
Because they're submitting stuff to ITC.
Just normal 3 detachment kind of ITC type stuff.
Yeah, it's all ITC rules. So I decided I'm going to do Sisters of Battle. And people are like, whoa, what? You play, what? Sisters? And I guess I'm the only guy in the Valley who plays Sisters. No
they
one's
clearly don't listen to the infinite characters.
They haven't seen it on the table.
They better get
we
ready.
do have a couple.
A lot of people could be playing.
They do have a couple of listeners. Robert
true.
Ashley, you heard him make fun of the fact that he only works twice a month. So,
what were your thoughts on the game?
Yeah,
the ITC format?
So I haven't played ITC format at all on 8th Ed. I had not done that before. And it had been quite a while since I'd played that format. I think one of the last times I played that format was in the Slaughter Hut a long time ago.
Wow. That was a long time ago.
Yeah. So anyway, I got paired up against an Eldari player. Really nice guy. Eric works midnight shift, and so we met right when the store opened.
I saw you post this.
So that we could play the game. And I decided, you know what? I'm going to bring a brigade list because the way that the sisters currently sit in chapter approved, in order to get faith points, you start with 3, and then you get another 1 for every 10 sisters you have in your army. So I was able to field 101 sisters in the army, which gave me a total of 13 faith points.
I thought you weren't playing orcs.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, right. But it's a brigade, right? So I had a whole bunch of smaller troop choices, and I couldn't spend money on special weapons because they're in a box overseas. And so I also had like 15 command points, right? Because it's a brigade.
Yeah.
Super fun game. I had to also reduce the number of vehicles I normally use because Robo Ed is painting some for me and some of the other ones are somewhere else. And so, I had to cut back on that. So instead of like 6 immolators, I had 3 rhinos, which did work. Those rhinos ended up being great for me. And so I had to
remember to try to repair them?
I did not.
I always forget it.
The immobilized,
It's not immobilized anymore. It's just
Rhino
you repair points. You roll and see if you repair. Yeah, they can be even more durable.
Yeah. Okay, I have
There's
to remember
no
that. Because
immobilized
immolators
anymore.
don't have that.
Oh, that's true. I'm tired.
I don't believe the immolators have that.
Oh, no.
So
rhinos do.
Yeah. So, I studied the ITC packet, try to understand how to do the secondaries and things like that. I picked, I think, Big Game Hunter, Head Hunter, and Engineers.
That was a funny message. I was at work and I got a message from Don like, what secondary should I take? What are you playing against? You know?
Yeah.
I thought he was playing you, not Justin.
No, I
gave him some ideas. Like, hey,
I'm just kidding.
Because there's a strategy about if you're playing this type of army, consider these. Or this type of army, and depending on what kind of army you have.
Yeah.
Well, once he told me I have 188 sisters, I'm like, take engineers. That might be good because you just got to hide a unit
and stay there.
Capture points.
So it was actually it was fun. It was a lot of fun. He was a great opponent, and we set it up and started playing, and I was like, okay, stay on the mission, stay on the mission, stay on the mission. And so every turn I'm like, okay, I need to kill that tank. Okay, I need to kill that character.
I need to kill something.
I need to kill something.
Preferably more than you.
Yeah. So it was just just trying to stay on mission, not get into like, ooh, that unit really pissed me off. I'm going to go after them. Why? It's not holding
It's almost
anything.
like you could have like a card that's like at the top in big letters that says stay on mission. And after that, it's
Stay on target.
Roll for your Rhino repair. Don't forget your faith points.
You say that.
No, I literally make
I actually
lists
do it
like that.
on my list. I actually have listed out little cheat sheet or like little one word notes.
Oh yeah,
shooting phase. Don't forget this 4+.
At the bottom of my lists, I always put don't forget this what do you call it? The cards,
a stratagem.
Yeah. Oh man, we're all tired.
I thought vehicles still get immobilized in 8th edition.
Don't forget this stratagem.
Right.
It's this many points. Don't forget this. I always
mental fatigue can play a big role in 40K. So anytime, and especially when you're old like us, you just make little post-it notes and
or playing 3 games in a day, you're going to be exhausted mentally by the end
of it. It's like I have a note that says enemy psycher with a box around it.
Yeah.
So when he goes, I'm going to do this psychic ability. Wait, time out. I think I'm supposed to do something here.
Yeah. No, I think that's a legitimate, especially as you're going through learning an army.
Yeah. What's going to be interesting is if one of the 2 players wants to use the clock, then you got to use the clock.
Yeah.
And I'm scared to death of the clock. Because
especially with 118 sisters.
Well, I've never used it before. And
did you guys use one?
No, we didn't.
Okay,
I'd never used one before.
I've actually never played a game of 40K with one either. I kind of want to try it for fun.
Used it before, and he hadn't played ITC in a while, so we were just like, you know what? We're just gonna be cash, no big deal. Like we were doing stuff, and I'm like, dude, you haven't moved those yet.
Right.
Oh yeah, it's good. I mean, so that's the kind of game it was.
That's
right.
Fun.
So we had a really good time. It was super close. Both of our armies had the 6+ feel no pain.
Yeah, I had it. Oathway. Yeah,
I had it because of Alora's Heart, and he had it because of Oathway. Right, because of what we picked. And he was so much better at rolling 6s than I was.
That's all it takes to win.
Yeah. Well, he had a Spirit Seer and a Farseer that I could not kill.
Nice.
I mean, over and over and over again. It's like
it's a sad day for the witch hunters when you can't kill a witch.
Yeah, it was
good
bad.
point.
It was bad.
Touche.
Yeah, it was crazy. Anyway,
so what was really so hold on. So this was a game for the league. Yeah. So what was the end result of the game? Did you win this game? Did you
27-26 I won.
Okay.
Wow.
Do the points matter in the league and where you place in the league? Oh, interesting.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah,
so it's not just win-loss, it's actual points.
Basically it's like going to a tournament. Mm-hmm. But instead of the games all being played all at the same time,
you play them over a span of weeks and months.
Span of weeks. Yeah. And so once everybody gets their scores in, then they do the next pairing. They use BCP.
Doug Johnson runs a league as well down in San Diego, and
the Masters
League.
Yeah. Oh yeah, so many people in Arizona want to copy that. They really like the Masters League idea.
Doug would be happy to share that with them. He's trying to spread it around. So
yeah, they definitely want to do it there.
Yeah.
But no, what a great game.
Sounds awesome. Actually,
it was a lot of fun. Yeah.
Cool. Justin, nothing
in this realm. Sadly,
fair enough. You've been playing Age of Sigmar?
Yeah. So I've been really feeling that guilt.
Just hold on a second.
Wait, we're recording Monday. Don't do this.
Yeah, I'm not saying crickets, but I'm just saying.
He's beating me.
Disciples of Tzeentch.
Yeah,
that's a battle tome.
I now have my whole Tzeentch army, and I had bought this, and I have yet to play it, and so I very much want to try it.
So stay tuned.
So yes, so one of the things I strongly suggest is that you put together a 1,000 point using the meeting engagement format, and if you want to hear more about that,
well, where would I listen, Adon?
So you would listen to Lords and Heroes because on Monday, Justin and I are going to have some beers,
and today
and talk
is Thursday.
And play.
It's Thursday and play. And talk about meeting engagement and where you should put what you should put in your spearhead and why.
Well,
Yes.
I would be very interested in that episode, so I will check it out.
Yay.
Okay.
But it's great, good stuff, and I look forward to you playing you, Carl.
I
with some
very much
Age of
want to try.
Sigmar.
Yes,
I mean,
yes,
like,
yes.
So, I mean, with the whole Zeech thing, like, I'm super into it. So, I mean, for as Age of
One
Sigmar-
army,
one of the
two
things,
systems.
One of the
Perfect.
things I like about this, though, is there's like, I think at the beginning of the game, you roll 9 dice, and then you set all those dice aside,
Yep, fate dice. Yeah.
and then you can pull them in whenever you want,
That's nice.
which is kind of a cool like mechanic. Like,
you want to
yeah.
talk about it?
I'm just saying, I like mechanics like that.
It's
right,
awesome,
and
yeah.
I like.
I played a corn army, and it was awesome.
I would love to see mechanics like that to bleed into.
Sure.
There still are some mechanics, but nothing specific.
yeah,
like
that's nice. And the other thing, Justin, is have you spent your $8 for your Warcry card set for Ideneth?
I have not yet. I have not.
$8, dude. It's
Yeah.
so
It's
worth
good,
it.
Good bargain at that.
I
price.
played both Daughters of Cain, and
For $8.
Stormcast
Games
in
Workshop is
Warcry with
just
those
Yeah,
using
Killing
those
it.
$8 cards. It is
fun.
awesome.
Anytime you can play more games with your toys, it's awesome.
Yeah.
40K, back to 40K.
Yes.
All right, so let's do this. We're going to take a break, and then we're going to come back, and we're going to leap into using older Warhammer 40K materials to expand your game. So we'll be right back. All right, and we're back, and we are now going to be talking about using older Warhammer 40K material.
Publications,
Kind of going forward.
anything, yeah.
Yeah,
Wait, are you referring to me as older Warhammer material? Is that what you-
we're not using you, Adon. I thought
yes,
we made
I'm
that
aware
clear.
of that.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of came to the surface again for me when the new Space Marine Codex came out, and people began complaining that I just bought this Codex, which GW actually does a pretty nice
Yep.
thing. If you've just bought the Codex
Within 30
and
days.
you reach out to
Yeah.
them, they'll I think they just give you a refund, or they
If you have the receipt, or
Yeah.
you go back, if it's a store, you have the history. It has to be a GW store, I think.
I think so.
With the receipt, they'll redo it.
Yeah. So, but I mean, even people have reached out to them online and they've been
Yeah.
like, yeah, we'll send you a new one or
Right,
something
sure.
to that effect. So, so the new Codex came out, people started to go through that cycle of getting upset and also with well, it's a cycle.
Yes.
I mean,
Yes.
literally, it
Yeah.
happens every time.
Yes.
We've seen it before.
And as a Space Marine player, you should be used to every year getting your book.
You know what? Here's
Just that's part of the deal.
Right. I mean, you reap the benefits
Yep.
of getting more toys than anybody else.
Right.
Sure.
And
You have to take the little pain that goes with it.
Yeah. There you
The
go.
little heartaches that go with
the
it.
Space Marine tax. That's what that's called now.
That's it.
So the other thing coming up is there's rumors and discussions going around about 9th edition now.
Yeah.
And people starting to freak out already about 9th edition because, the sky's falling and things are going to be terrible. 9th edition would be just an iteration of 8th edition.
They're not going to wipe everything and start over.
No,
Yeah.
I think you're going to see more of a Age of Sigmar, to Age of Sigmar
Tweaking.
2.0.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I think everybody's pretty happy overall with how the game sits and how it's playing. And from a developer point of view, I think they're.
From a developer point of view, yeah.
I think they're.
There's always both sides of the coin.
Yeah,
But
I mean, you have
most
people
people are-
who liked it a little bit more granular, and who
Sure.
are not happy with the streamlining. But yeah,
But
that's going to happen.
But
You're not gonna-
arguably, the game has brought back more people than
yes.
ever before. I mean,
Yes.
They can't make it fast enough.
I mean, we can't see
literally.
any.
Yes,
yeah,
they're running
we
out.
can't see any metrics or anything because GW doesn't share that stuff. But realistically, I think you can just feel that more people have joined this hobby lately.
Well,
and
it's safe
come
to say
back to
we
it.
all,
Well,
we all
we
have
saw
our
it-
finger on the pulse.
Yeah.
of-
Yeah, I
of
mean,
40K. And,
we saw it at the local shops
Yep.
when 8th dropped. The number of people who got back in,
Yeah.
and
and are still getting back in.
they're still getting back in. Yeah,
It's
sure.
so, and then of course the discussion around creep of I have to bring more books and yada yada. And I think we've discussed that one to death
Yep.
during the Warrior Lodge
Yep.
episodes. Really, the only answer there is they got to do an app of some
Right.
kind.
Yep.
Okay, because otherwise the game just stagnates. Period. Okay, full stop. We're done with that.
all done.
But it did get me thinking about, well, I do have a lot of older material.
Should I throw them away?
As I was cleaning out my garage, I mentioned that I threw a ton of 5th edition stuff just right in the garbage because I was just like, it's taking up a ton of space. I'm not using it. And that's not to say I regret that. I don't. It was the right move at the time for me. But I do have a ton.
Do you always have that pause too before you?
For sure.
It's just like, and then it's like pulling that Band-Aid off.
Am I going to regret this?
Yeah.
But it is.
Do you remember the dumpster and all the MechWarrior stuff?
But yeah, but it is. There is a certain.
That was
level.
pulling off like you got shot in the head, pulling that bandage off your skull wound.
But it is. Jeez.
I'm sorry.
It is
dark.
It is. There is a certain amount of liberation feeling to it. Like once it's done, you're like, okay.
This hobby does turn us into hoarders.
Yeah,
it does,
big time. So let's talk about those hoards a little bit because, from core rule sets to old models,
old white dwarfs,
campaign codexes, campaign books. There is a ton of stuff out there that people would say, well, that's now outdated, but can still be used. And so I want to start off our discussion around the 4th edition Warhammer 40K rulebook, which was the rulebook that I came into the game with. And it's very crunchy in its rules, much more so than where we are now. There was as 7th edition, you saw there was like kind of a rule for every action you could take. And so,
well, the vehicle rules alone were like
totally different.
20 pages.
Right.
Yeah.
And the reality is you could go back and play 4th edition if that was the style you enjoyed.
And many do.
And some people do that.
Especially with the fantasy game, that was a lot of people go back to that. 40K, I don't seem to see that as much in the community.
It seems to roll forward. Yeah.
But
there's some people playing Old Hammer.
Yeah.
But that's like super old Hammer. I don't think they're interested so much in 4th ed.
No, they're
second.
like
second. Yeah. So I look, I mean, realistically, I don't see people doing that. But in the back of that book, there are some interesting kill team style missions. And in fact, that's where I don't know if that's where it originated, but that was where I first saw it and saw that they offered in the book. It was
definitely 4th, because
another way to play. Yeah. And now these have largely been replaced by Kill team. So but it is interesting to look at, and there are some ideas that you could pull into missions of Kill team. There's like the concept of patrols and all this kind of stuff.
Well, missions for me is kind of the key word, right? Like any kind of book that has missions.
And I think you're going to hear that a lot during this episode.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think there is limited value to that 4th edition book at the point. Oh, you actually mentioned. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to steal your thunder.
No, that's totally fine.
But there was that Sentries mechanic. That was the thing.
That's what I really liked about it, is that you could set it up so that you could even have it so that 2 players can play a kill team mission, and you can use the Sentries mechanic from that as almost like a third AI player.
Yeah, but where it really kind of came to what it was intended for was, hey, you're guarding this outpost, and these guys are trying to sneak up on you, and so you can't see them because your sentries do this behavior until they see them, and then all hell breaks loose.
Yeah, these klaxon counters that create noise. And if you've created too much noise, they come towards you. And
So, but I mean, that's kind of cool stuff, and that's stuff that you could integrate
You
into.
absolutely can.
And so using those as resources allow you to kind of expand on missions, especially for narrative play. This is where it really, really kicks in.
So the 4th edition book, I'm sorry, I jumped right on you.
No, you're good.
Yeah, so the 4th edition book, I did similar to my 7th edition Warhammer Fantasy book. I just took and tore out the whole first section that had all the rules in it and just kept the part that had the missions and stories and background, all that. And I just
40K scrapbooking.
Yes. Yes. I go back
it's a new hobby.
I go back to the Coral Palms retreat and do my crafting there.
Nice callback.
Genius.
Thank you.
Wow.
It's an elite choice.
That was very professional of you. All right. We're going to extend your contract.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
And so, okay, so we had that in the 4th edition rulebook. The 5th edition rulebook, I felt like was pretty, like, I don't want to say basic because it wasn't basic, but it was like, here's the game. This is the game.
Yeah.
It was very cut and dry. And this, I think, was one of the problems with 5th edition as you got towards kind of the end of 5th edition. It was feeling really stale. It was like, well, there's these missions you play. They had a few expansions that we'll talk about in a bit, but effectively, like, the book itself felt really dry. I didn't feel like there was a whole lot to it, which was interesting because I stood in line at midnight to buy that book. Like there was a big release for it at Game Castle, and I was super excited about it. And I enjoyed 5th edition. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But I felt like it kind of reached the end of it.
At the end, we were like, okay, we're done. Let's move on.
I think when it comes to 40K rule books, you know, like all this or any systems rule books, they're the hardest books for me to just toss.
Yeah.
Because I like having that there it is. There they all are. Although I still do need to get a Rogue Trader book. But
you can buy the reprints.
I know, I need to. But just having that all
they'll have them.
Yeah, I'll have to pick one of those up and try it. I've never played Rogue Trader. You never know. That could be fun.
We should try it.
Because I need to role play
It'd
more.
It'd be fun. Okay, anyway, so
but you know what I mean? Like the rule books, just having those on your bookshelf.
Yeah.
Just there it is. There's all the editions right there. And maybe you don't go back and look. You look at some more than others.
And do they bring you joy still, Justin?
Yeah,
they do.
Yeah,
I mean,
and
for
I think
me,
then you should keep them. Mm-hmm. If when you touch them, they give you joy, then you should keep them.
I pray to them.
A Don Condo.
Yeah.
Yes, but like certain codex books, like we'll jump to these books.
Yes.
But for me, just having those core rule books, I can't throw them away.
The other problem with throwing them away is that they are really well designed.
Totally.
It's a really well designed and thought out.
And I have
book.
collector's editions for a lot of them, and it's like I can't do it.
And that's really hard to throw out. But
not even the slipcases.
It is.
So you're collecting them. They're collector's editions.
Right.
There you go.
But it is difficult for me to throw out something that is that well made.
Yeah.
Right. Regardless of what it is, you're like, oh well.
Well, it hurt when I tore that section out of the fantasy book.
Did you hear it scream?
Yes, there were echoes from the warp. Yes.
Okay, so I kind of skipped through the 5th edition, 6th edition book because I felt like, not a lot there, but let's go right to the 7th edition core rule set.
Do we have to?
Yes, and here is why. Because
here.
there was the boxed edition of this set.
That's right.
Which came with 3 books.
I loved it.
And there was A Galaxy at War, Dark Millennium, and The Rules. And The Rules was the third book.
Rules.
Yep. The first 2 books of the set contain backstory and history of Warhammer 40,000 before it was updated to the Cicatrix Maledictum in the Fall of Cadia and all that.
Right.
It's cleaned up in its presentation. It's very clear what has gone on. It's still a great read to see what went on before. The books, again, going back to that well-designed, they have a nice feel to them.
Yep.
It's a good book, but the lore in that book is valuable. And
it covers a lot.
Yeah. Additionally, so the first book contained a ton of pictures and a great discussion about the aspects of the hobby, like everything from, look, you can go to Black Library and read these books, and here's information about that too. Here's examples of painted models. I mean, it as we were preparing for this episode, like I spent a lot of time flipping through that book going, oh yeah. Oh, that's a cool picture.
It was like one book was a hobby book, one book was a lore book, one book was a rule book.
Right. And the hobby book...
I loved the fact that they did that. I wish they still did that.
Yeah. The hobby book wasn't like, here's how you do all the hobby.
Right.
But it was like,
examples
for a new player,
right.
Here is, and even for experienced players, here is the hobby in its completeness and what Games Workshop is offering you. And I still find that book fascinating to flip through.
Yeah. And it came in a really nicely done slipcase too. It matched, brought it all together.
Yeah, it's right here.
Another good thing too with books like that too, that especially like the lore books, if you have somebody who's kind of like 40K curious, is you could say, hey, the first one's free. Why don't you borrow that, take that home, chew on it.
It's a good point.
And you never know. They might look at that artwork and they might read a story that goes, that's awesome.
That clicked with me.
And then they go to the Games Workshop website and they're like, what are these squats? And
they're how much for plastic models?
Yeah. How much does that single plastic clam pack cost?
But it's plastic.
Yeah.
So, this is a set I'm not willing to throw away, the 7th edition box set. Not for the rules. Like the rules
I kept the other
dated.
2 books. I threw the rules away.
Did you
just throw the rules away? And then...
Well, I just keep the whole set just because it brings me joy. But,
yes.
But I will say those other 2 books are quite fascinating to have and to keep. And they, going back through that old stuff can bring back ideas and thoughts and that kind of thing.
And it can be therapeutic too if you start getting angry at 8th edition. You could just go back and read the 14 pages of special rules in that book and
then remember how much I
got it good.
So one of the things I wanted to point out about this set and just about any of the rule books is a lot of times they'll have really cool layouts of either star systems or sections of the galaxy or just a planet itself and a kind of description of the planet. And those things are fantastic resources for map-based campaigns.
They're massive seeds of inspiration.
For one-day events. There's stuff you don't have to make up anymore.
Yeah.
And I'm going to talk about an example that's a current example out of the current Space Marine book when we get to the codexes. But what's really cool is that you read something in one of those older books, and it's like, yes, and this squad did this, and this guy did that, and it was on this planet, and you're like, you know what? Joe has that army, and I've got this army. Holy crap, we can do this.
Yeah, all of a sudden, it's a seed of an idea that you can expand on. So it as I designed a campaign, like I was flipping through a lot of these books, just looking for this kind of information. As I come up with ideas for the show, I flip through the books. I flip through all old White Dwarf magazines. We'll talk about that in a minute. One thing we didn't mention too about these rule books is they also contain some pretty great artwork.
Yes.
And
worst case, rip those things out.
Cut them out with an X-Acto blade. You should have an X-Acto knife.
Well, I say rip, cut precisely. And
Adon ripped out all the special rules, the universal special rules, and he just keeps them in his back pocket, wipes his tears with them.
I forgot that was.
So we can transition into codexes because that's a good point you have about codexes too.
Yeah. Great point. So
and even the covers of the codexes.
A lot of these that really got to Justin. A lot of these books contain occasionally,
it's funny because it's true,
a full page picture. It's usually a painting of some kind, especially like Space Marine Codex or any of the codexes. Usually an entry level page too has like a full page, no text on it kind of picture. You pair that with a $15, $12 frame from Target, and all of a sudden you're decorating
a $2
your room.
frame from the dollar store. I mean, it doesn't have to be real expensive. I mean, you can make it. Yeah,
that's true.
Or a nicer $12 to $15 frame.
On the next episode, we'll go over framing your artwork.
Framing in 40K.
You go back to Coral Palms. You have a scrapbooking kit with your frames.
But all the images I have here,
right?
Most of the images I have up in the Astronomicon are $15 Target frames with a what do they call it, a matte border,
right?
That I took from the 40K and 30K calendars.
Yeah, the calendars,
because they're nice and big. But there are a few that hang over my
IKEA
cases, that are taken from codexes and that kind of thing. I just put in another frame.
And I just want to call out Games Workshop and give them some props for a second, because on almost all of their larger box sets now, whether it's Warcry or Kill Team, wherever, they an insert on the top, they give you a really nice size full color art piece with no writing or anything on it that you can
the box cover
art that is suitable for framing.
Yeah, it's really great.
And even in some of the box of models, like not the big games, but like the Triumvirate.
The Triumvirate had it. Yep.
Came with a cool little piece of art. Yeah. I have it in my IKEA cabinet behind my Inari army.
Right.
Perfect.
Yeah. No, I think it's fantastic that they put those things in there. And I actually look forward to opening the box to see. I want to see those.
Sure. Yeah, it's interesting because
Blackstone Fortress.
When I first started and we were recording out of the boiler room, it was a struggle to find artwork for 40K that I could hang up.
Right.
It was absolutely a struggle, and now it is very much like an abundant. Like I literally have to say, okay, what am I not going to hang up at this point?
I haven't opened my Apocalypse box, the Knights Apocalypse box. Are they in the Apocalypse box?
I don't know. I haven't bought any of those.
Oh, okay. I have to go look.
I'm gonna guess no.
Yeah, I think not.
Yeah,
probably.
Okay. So as I was going through these, let me use an example of one of these though, which is the Crimson Slaughter Codex, which came out in 7th edition towards kind of the end of 7th edition. It didn't get a whole lot of use.
Yep.
But I call this one out because this was a faction for Chaos Space Marines, and I thought it was a really odd choice at the time. But there is a lot of interesting backstory and lore here to this Chaos Space Marine faction, where it deals with like these ghosts that are kind of around them and stuff. And it's actually pretty amazing. And it makes for, as Adon, as you were talking about earlier, reading through this, there's a list of, hey, they fought this army here, they fought this army here, they fought in this engagement, they fought in this engagement. And it's just a matter of time till you go, oh, that sounds very, very intriguing.
But didn't they actually have Altar of War missions in that book?
Yeah. So at the back of that book too, they added Altar of War missions, which we'll talk about Altar of War in a little bit, which were just books of missions. Anytime, as Justin just said, anytime we're going to bring up the word missions, which is going to be a lot during this, a lot of these missions are, while they are geared towards 7th edition, with a slight tweak, all of a sudden it's an 8th edition.
Very
mission.
easily.
There's deployment zones. There's objectives. The objectives don't typically change. Hey, capture X.
Yep. Kill and capture.
Objectives are captured in this
Here's
way.
your little tweaks you can do.
Right.
With a seed of information I got from some random book.
There may be some things that are like, because of this, everybody's initiative is reduced by 2 and initiative is no longer a thing. So, okay, skip that piece of it.
Or so you can just change it to like they have 1 inch less movement.
Right.
They're slower.
Boom. Let's just do that.
Yeah.
Okay, we're done. We're playing a new mission.
Right.
So,
or you use a twist card from the open war deck.
Yeah. So this one was huge for me though, because the older codexes were really good. Justin, you wanted to add a few points here.
Where my points were. So basically for me, like a lot of the old codex books, it's really hard for me to throw away, especially for armies I love.
Yeah.
It's just from a lot
Do you have like all the Dark Eldar codexes?
Yeah.
All three of them?
All 3. Well, the first one we don't really talk about because it was,
But you have it.
48 years ago. But I do have it.
48 years ago.
I do have it. And it's funny in doing
Game's been out 35 years.
doing research for the show, I was going through like old chapter approved.
Oh, yeah.
And looking through just how far we've come, both model and rules wise, in White Dwarf articles, Dark Eldar getting updated, for example.
Yeah.
Just looking back at that, and it was funny. It was a trip down memory lane.
Har.
But I always think back when I think of old codex books. For me, like one of the most inspirational books, as you guys can clearly tell from the Show of Force Eldari episode, was just that 2nd edition Eldar book. Even though it was back in like 93 or 4 or whatever the heck that came out, the lore in it is basically the lore we have nowadays. The pictures of the models, even though they're older models, they were still really well painted. All kinds of great ideas for color schemes.
Except the Goblin Green bases.
Except for the Goblin Green bases. Yep. I just kind of, when I look at it, I hold my thumb up and I block the base and I go, that was a good idea. But yeah, I mean, you can always get that inspiration from the old paint jobs as far as painting has come.
Yeah.
A lot of that foundational stuff can be found all over the old books, especially if you're privileged enough to have those old like fantasy. Do you guys ever get the fantasy miniatures books that were like a collaboration of all the Games Day entries and Golden Demons?
Yep.
Yeah.
All that painting fodder. If you're ever like, man, what color scheme do I want to do this army? Go back and look. If you have those old books, you might find a little nugget of a color scheme.
Yeah.
'Cause it seemed to me they maybe did a bit more of those like really offshoot color schemes within the book.
Yeah.
In the older codex books of like, here's 50 different ways to paint a guardian, you know?
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
So let's move into old supplements because we were just talking about missions.
Oh, here we go. Yes.
Compendium, Altar of War, and the battle missions for 7th edition, and the battle missions book for 5th edition.
Yes.
2 of the most awesome books you could have.
Yes.
So these books are full of missions and ideas for missions that are easily transferable to 8th edition. They broke down the missions based on the army you were playing.
Yep.
So if I had Space Marines, okay, here's the 3 Space Marine missions.
Yep.
And one is kind of in your favor, one is
Neutral,
and the other one's really
hard.
against
Sure.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And man, I'm telling you, like as Chris Ross said, the battle missions book was like
That was
loved
the thing.
He always talks about like one of his favorite games ever was one of those crazy missions,
Yep.
and it came down to just being like every model got swarmed by orcs, but there were so many epic things that happened that it just didn't matter.
Yeah, those books, that battle missions book was the go-to
For your events.
Yeah, and Mike and I used it just for our own games.
Yeah.
And you go through you'd play all 3 of the missions. And it's just so much fun
and super useful still.
Yeah.
So if you do not have one of these, I'd highly recommend getting your hands on one of them because they are a lot of fun. They are still usable. Again, you may run into a few things like deal with initiative or something that doesn't apply anymore, but effectively they're still playable.
Oh yeah.
And it's just any time that you can play this game and play it in a different way, it's like opening a new door.
Especially if you find yourself in that kind of burnout stage of like, all I do is play ITC missions or whatever
or,
the case may be.
Or all I do is play
open war, or whatever
right?
the case may be.
Yeah.
Switch it up.
Well, this is one of the reasons why I like, you've got the rule book, you've got chapter approved 17. You got chapter approved 18. You know, there's missions all through
There's
those.
plenty of new missions coming out.
Bunch of
for
missions
sure.
in those.
Yeah.
But
You know,
many missions. Missions.
There's never too many
missions.
They could literally print a book. I've used the word literally a lot this episode.
you
and
have.
I've been trying to steer away from it. They could print a book the size of the 40K rule book full of missions. Super buy that in a second.
Oh yeah.
In a second. Some could be good, some could be bad. I'd play them all.
I would prefer it if they had it on cards so you could randomly select them and then put them together. Almost like you create your own open war.
Like a deck.
They have that.
Yeah.
What are you talking?
Not 8th ed.
Literally have that.
What are you talking about?
The open war deck is.
That's an 8th ed edition.
I thought it was a 7th ed thing.
Oh, I'm lost too. I
It's
thought,
an
I
eighth
thought
ed-
he was being facetious.
Yeah, I was like, where are you going with this? No, that's it.
It's
Okay,
8th ed?
we've all had our
eighth, yeah. We've all had our
Okay,
moment.
yeah, all right.
That's an 8th ed.
All right.
Yeah, most certainly.
Oh no, I'm sorry. The reason because the open war decks in Age of Sigmar are first edition Age of
That is-
Sigmar.
that is
cards.
true.
That's
That is
what I was
true.
thinking. Okay, never mind.
Okay.
Carry on.
You've been playing that other game too much.
Carry on. Yes.
So yeah, I think that the first thing I thought of when I thought of doing this episode was
Battle
Altar
missions.
of War and Battle
Yep.
Missions. I was like, those books are still go-to books. I have them pulled out. They're not sitting in my box of retired books. They're actually on the shelf so that we can go to them anytime we want.
Right.
So they're still very, very usable. If you can find them on eBay or you find them floating around, totally worth picking up.
Yep.
Okay, so we start getting towards the end of 7th edition. And we know we're getting towards the end of 7th edition because really weird things start happening that are kind of leading up to the fall of Cadia. And that starts with Curse of the Wolfen and the Wrath of Magnus, which are two separate, I guess, campaign's kind of a strong word for it, but it is. It's a stories combined with missions in the books, and it is. We see the return of Magnus. We see the return of the 13th Company for the Wolfen. Right. The story ushers in kind of the beginning of the fall of Cadia, and we didn't really realize it at the time, but the closure of 7th edition and opening of 8th edition.
And anybody who'd been paying attention to how they closed out Warhammer Fantasy
Yeah. With the end times.
with the End Times books, you're kind of like, oh, I see what's happening
Right.
here.
This for me was a little early. Like I didn't kind of see it coming yet.
Yeah.
Because 7th edition was pushing out
Yes.
so much stuff.
Yes.
I was like, oh, here's another thing. But
Well,
then-
especially because it released a Primarch.
yeah.
And you thought, oh, this is going to be around for a while before they switch it up.
Right.
Yeah.
So each of the sets were 2 books, and one was full of story and the other one was full of rules. And the rules book contained a lot of information that's totally outdated now, such as formations, the dreaded F word. And, but they also contained missions, which we've talked about previously.
Right.
And those missions still playable in 8th edition. So you could play through these scenarios in 8th edition and kind of recreate this whole experience, which by the way, is a pretty cool experience.
It is.
So, as I said, a lot of those rules don't apply anymore, but it also provides seeds and ideas for creating your own kind of lore-heavy stories and missions. Now, for the Thousand Suns and Space Wolf players here, the other nice thing is that these contain a ton of example plates and ideas for characters and alternate color schemes, which you were just talking about, and that's why I wanted to kind of address that.
Jeff's favorite little color templates.
That's right.
Yeah.
I don't remember what he called it. What do we call it? The Jeff color plate or something?
Yeah.
The Hummel plates.
The Hummel plate.
Hummel
that was
plates.
it. It was you that named it, the Hummel plate. So we see here in the Thousand Suns one, like all these different color schemes that Thousand Suns can come in.
Right.
I think even more so than they show in the Thousand Suns Codex now. So it was kind of interesting to see, and there's a lot of stuff you can pull from that these are still worth having around and still worth reading, without a doubt.
Sure.
Again, actually, as I kind of am talking about that, I'm like, playing through this, like, it would be fun to play against a Space Wolf player, right?
Austin.
We have Austin.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
It'd be fun to kind of play through these since I've got the other side of that.
yeah.
I'll
force.
dust off my wolves. I got my little 1,500 point
That'd
contingent.
be kind of badass, actually.
Would be
So anyway, and I hadn't really considered it until I was just kind of reading this again, and I'm like, that'd be kind of fun.
Yeah.
Gathering Storm, right? So then this leads into the Gathering Storm,
which was very clearly the close of 8th,
right?
7th,
which are the 3 books that effectively close out 8th edition. So
7th edition
or 7th edition. Sorry, I don't have those sitting right here. They're over there. So anyway, they starts with Fall of Cadia, Fracture of Bealtan, and Rise of the Primarch. Was the third one. That's actually not bad. Okay,
very
well
good.
done.
So. Again, missions. Again, there's missions in these too.
And some decent lore.
Yeah.
Decent. Not amazing.
So
there's lore in these books.
There's lore in these books.
There you go. Always remain positive.
Here's what I would say about that. Yes,
Let me say this about that.
there is lore in these books.
Literally.
I found the reading and the story a bit drawn out and dry. However, it is important lore.
It is important lore.
That's the thing.
And it is important
for the movement of the story.
Yes, and it is important for understanding how we got from where we were to in 7th to where we are now in 8th edition. Like how that story changed.
You're like, reboot who? What?
And you can read like a summary of that in the 8th edition basic rulebook. But if you want to read about it in detail, these are the 3 books that you're going to need to read to figure out what happened and more of the intricacies of what's Cypher doing and how did Rabute Gilliman come back. And
so you read it, you tear out the missions, and you throw it away.
No.
No? Okay.
there's also artwork in these books.
Keep the artwork.
There's something that you have in your notes that I really want to get to. So about this book.
So the other interesting things though is some of these missions that are all over this book have some neat features like empiric storms, which provides tables that for the most part still work. Yeah. I mean, again, there can be like the whole thing about initiative changing or whatever, but those make really interesting missions when you're playing them and you have like this effect is now affecting the table this round.
Right.
And you're like, oh, okay.
Or you could agree with your opponent. You could look at that storm table and say, hey, let's, if you don't want to keep it super random, like where are we fighting?
You can choose.
Just pick one little
the other thing you can do is
to your game.
Yep.
Or you do it over a series of games and you play in each one of them. You say each one.
True.
As
you
it
say,
escalates,
hey, we're going into this planet. We know this storm's going to be affecting the planet. And so you might build your list
differently. You could prepare for it. Yeah, that would actually be really cool. That's a good idea. That's a good idea, Don.
Yeah, I ran an event like that one time.
All right, nice.
We should just sit back and listen to let it Don.
No. I love this. I love the empiric storms, the demon world stuff, all that kind of stuff.
For sure. Yeah, for sure.
I don't really like random terrain. Where all these different terrain effects on the tables. I don't necessarily like that. But when you say the whole table is this,
there's a few where I do like.
Yeah.
Except when I'm capturing smoke, there's a few that I do like. But like I don't mind like the burning building ones and stuff.
Yeah,
you just got to be really clear about what is what.
Yes, you got to be clear about it.
Planetary Onslaught, again a 7th edition book. This combined Planet Strike, Stronghold Assault, and Cities of Death rules. These were originally released as individual supplements, and then it kind of combined all three of them into one book. So you can still find those individual.
But then they
ones.
updated all of that in the chapter approves.
Right,
the first 2 chapter approves.
Those were 8th edition again.
Right. I'm saying they took those rules and updated them.
Yeah. What I'm saying is those rules are outdated. Like this was a short-lived book that actually still though contains a number of missions and stuff that maybe are not reflected.
The missions, like we covered in the episode where we talked about the chapter approved, those missions, specific missions, they updated in chapter approved.
Yes.
So you don't really need that book anymore.
Are they not like there's not any different missions at all? Oh, I thought there was a couple
They
different.
just updated them for 8th edition.
Oh, okay.
So you actually can throw that book away.
There you go. One book I'll never throw away.
There's some artwork.
There is some artwork.
Keep the art, throw it away. That 4th edition City Fight book, like I was looking at that.
Oh,
just for the terrain building.
Yes.
Like that was back when, hey, grab some foam core and some sand and some garbage.
This is actually an interesting
point. And I remember looking back at that
City Fight book
just
was a
as
great
a kid and now being old, and it's like, this is still awesome. Like if I am being kind of cheap and I have like a weekend to kill, I could go down and spend like $20 at Michael's or whatever, and I could make some really cool ruined buildings and just copy ones they made in there.
And that's the interesting thing, and that's the huge difference between then and now.
Sure.
They don't include instructions like that anymore.
No, they're selling terrain.
Now it's
had a few articles here and there, but back in the day,
but those articles are always, and this is what I'm asking them to do is how you can combine those things with
scratch building,
which is fine. I'd love to see stuff like expanding my terrain.
But that Signified book, I mean, for example, you could really easily look at that and go, okay, here's how I could build like a big platform or a base to add a foam core, and how to add like that Gothic kind of architecture out of like a cereal box, and then put some filler in it to fill the gaps and sprinkle some sand, and then put a Games Workshop ruin on top.
Right.
Maybe with a stairway going up, and now you have a sweet looking line of sight blocking a terrain piece that's both scratch built and store bought.
Yes. Yes. Combining it. Yeah.
Just a lot of really cool terrain ideas from that book. I'll never throw it away.
The other one I pulled out was Death from the Skies.
Yes.
Interesting book. So
before we go to Death of the Skies, I want to go back to Planetary
please, go ahead.
just a little bit, because Urban Conquest, they took all those ideas and brought it into an 8th edition campaign set called Urban Conquest. And even though some people don't like all the kind of fiddly pieces of that system, it still brings a lot of that flavor into.
Which fiddly pieces are you referring to?
The actual the little cards and the slots.
I think the card stuff's really cool.
I do too.
The thing I don't like about it is the stickers. Like,
right. I'm just saying, some people thought it was a little too much.
Oh, really?
But the cool missions in there, and the fact that you can set up the tables and it gives you the examples, it's great stuff. And it's part of that kind of feel. It's that same vibe as the Planetary Onslaught stuff.
So I should just throw Planetary Onslaught away.
I think at this point you could.
Okay,
just
fair
tear out. Carefully,
I'll be honest.
Carefully cut out the nice.
I'll be honest.
artwork.
Stronghold Assault was always a pretty crappy supplement in my mind. I was never a huge fan of that. And Planet Strike.
I remember when that first came out, we were all excited about it, and you got the sweet bastions and all the really cool terrain.
And then you drop down and blow them up in the first round, and you're like, okay,
and the rules, like I remember even reading the rules. Like, so I can reserve my entire army as the defender. Like we had to FAQ that thing right out of the book.
The reserves, I mean the rules for Planetary. If you tweaked them, they could work the way they were written.
Yeah, we would play. We would play
it.
You had to keep like at least 75% of your units as the defender on the board.
Yeah,
and that kind of helped.
All right, so let's talk Death from the Skies. So Death from the Skies was a really interesting book. Yeah.
Yes.
I'll be honest, I played it with Zach, and it was a lot of fun.
It's
it was
dogfighting.
Surprisingly more fun than I expected it to be.
Interesting.
And it was really, really cool. So there are air war missions in here which would still theoretically be usable. I think you'd have to do a lot of adjusting to get this
and have that like at a completely separate table.
I don't know if you needed to do a lot of adjusting. What you need to do is think of it as a different game than 8th edition.
Right.
It's its own game.
You could play it as the 7th edition.
As its own game.
Because all of the sheets are in there for all the flyers.
Right.
So I think you're right. I see what you're saying.
And any flyers that have come out since that book, you could dummy it up.
Yeah.
But if you just take that as a standalone game.
Kind of like when they did the night jousting game.
Right.
Right?
Yeah. Think of it as a 28 millimeter Aeronautica light.
Yeah. But then Aeronautica is about to come out, and then we don't have to worry about that either.
Okay, throw that one away.
No, but I do know what you're saying. Actually, this is an interesting point, and I think that there's still value in giving it a try. You raise a good point, and like I said, I had a lot of fun with Zach on this. I was surprised at how much fun it was, and how durable the flyers were in that. Like I thought, this is going to be over very fast. No. There was a lot of maneuvering, and
and one of the ways we used it is when we had a big apocalypse game going. We had a table with all the flyers. Yeah. And they were fighting, and if you got out through the fight to one section of the board, you could then go off to one of your ally tables.
Yeah.
That's cool.
And that neat. Comes in as an asset onto that table.
Interesting.
It's like, oh, okay, you now have a Stormbird.
Right.
Or a Storm Talon.
Right.
Oh, you now
Stormbird is big.
Yeah, that would be big.
Yeah.
Oh, you now have a Hemlock Wraith Fighter.
So I think there's ideas within here. I wouldn't say it's a critical purchase or anything. But if you're looking for something a little different,
if you're into planes,
this might be an interesting jaunt down memory lane. Okay,
cool.
The big one for me, Imperial Armor Forge World books.
Yeah, those are never getting thrown away. Never.
No.
Oh, they're too nice.
So first off, the lore. Now, where we talked about the Fall Acadia and all that, we were like, there's lore in it. In most of these books, there's lore in it.
There's good stuff.
And it is gritty and how I envision 40K.
Yeah.
I'm not even talking the campaign books here. We'll talk about those in a couple minutes. I'm just talking about like the Forces of Chaos book, the Forces of the Imperium book, just the regular books that's like unit after unit of Forge World units. This is where you used to get the rules for all these Forge World units. But the great thing is, not only would they tell you, here's the rules for this Forge World Razorback type, they would also have a whole bunch of lore and history about that vehicle type.
Right.
Even going on to talking about engagements that they were seen in.
Right.
There's beautiful pictures in this stuff. I mean, these are books that are truly collector's editions.
And the Forge World books, and correct me if I'm wrong, but in the 40K books, the battle sequences and the other artwork is artwork that are paintings and drawings, stuff like that. In the Forge World book, they basically use photograph techniques of actual models in battles.
And then CGI it up.
And and made it look like it was an art piece.
And cleaned it all up.
Yeah. And that was where you first started to see that.
Yeah.
And I remember the first time you said, oh, yeah, those are actual models. I'm like, oh, wait.
They are.
They are.
And I own some of those models.
Yeah, it's so cool. I know. Now you own that.
My Minotaurs were in some of those books.
So it's pretty
That's cool.
Yeah.
So, even if you're talking about just the vehicle and unit entry books, Imperial Armor, I think it's 2, and Imperial Armor 13, and these are books that are still worth the money, I think.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, they're not printed anymore, and certain books are going to be going up in price, and I guarantee that, even though the rules are still dated. So we'll talk about those in a second as we move into anything else you want to add on those books specifically, because then we're about to go into campaign.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, because they do talk about the background and the lore of the different units and things like that, what some people like to have is sometimes when they're painting it, they might want to put like a vehicle name on there or something like that, or action badges or whatever.
Marking or whatever.
And so you get some great ideas out for
Additionally, they have tons of the Hummel plates,
right?
the color plates, which is what inspired me to do Word Bearers at one point from the Horus Heresy books.
It's funny how those things work, because as simplistic, quote unquote, as they are, sometimes you look at one of those long enough and you're like, I could paint that
that color
really
scheme
quickly.
is actually really cool.
Somebody did that Alpha Legion tank with the serpents on the side.
Oh, it was incredible. Yeah. So I have these a little bit out of order because I want to drop down, since we just talked about those in Forge World books. I want to talk. So let's talk about old campaigns for a minute. And in particular, now let's go back to the Imperial Armor books dealing with the campaign. So those books I was just talking about were kind of just the unit entry books. But then the way this would typically work is Forge World would release a bunch of models, and then they'd release a book supporting those models. Right. And so, for example, they released the Shadow Spectres, Eldar. What's the unit called?
The Shadow Spectres?
But they're called they have the howling the screaming howling banshees. They have the
you're talking about aspect warriors.
Thank you. So the Shadow Spectres were a brand new aspect warrior.
The Wraith Seer
added to it.
And Warp Hunter and yada yada yada. Yeah.
Yep. So they added new vehicles and all this, and you saw all those come out.
A little thing called a Phantom Titan.
And then you knew that's right, and you knew a book was going to come out supporting those.
Yep.
And so what would happen is they would release the models with beta rules online that you could download and try.
And then kind of compile them all.
They compile it all into a book along with a story that went along with the conflict between, in this case, with the Doom of Mamiara. It was the Eldar at the time before they became Eldari.
Sure.
But the Eldari versus, there was Space Wolves and IG.
Guard,
Yep. And so you'd have this huge story around it. You'd see beautiful, as you talked about, models, but now photoshopped with all these effects and everything. You'd see color plates of the different types. It would add rules for, in that one, I think it adds rules for the Eldar Corsairs,
which we don't talk about anymore.
Right, I know.
Yeah.
But also it introduced the Shadow Spectres, a whole
new aspect
unit.
warrior.
Yeah. And so it was all very intriguing, but that lore is still incredibly valuable.
Super easy for you just to, if you have a buddy that plays Space Wolves, hey, I play Eldari, let's like reenact this. Let's set up 3 or 4 linked games.
And by the way, those missions are in the
they're
books.
Still in the mission. Yep. And you just sit down, have that conversation over a cup of tea.
Yep.
And you hash it out and get a cool campaign set up really easily.
Yeah. And so, I mean, in my mind, the lore of the 40K universe, nobody writes it better than Forge World. And in particular, when Alan Bly was involved in writing these things and sometimes rewriting these books for publication, these are just a treasure trove of storytelling and lore and just grittiness and grimness of they're not to be missed out on.
Just a crazy level of detail is what always blew me away with those books.
Yeah.
Just dripping with detail.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, some of the minute things, as you pointed out at Don, where you're like, oh, this guy fought this thing, or, you know, this unit was here. Like, there's tons of that stuff, just tons of it. And in addition, you can see from the point of, so when these first came out, Jeff and I used to call them future history because they were like, well, this battle took place and here are all the units that were there and here are all the units that were there on the other side. And here was the mission. Play those units with this mission.
Yes.
That's what you do.
Yep. Yes.
So you had to have all those units to play that mission. And it was kind
of harkens back to like the old Rogue Trader days, to be honest, because that was very much like that
or
role playing
historical
battles. I mean, you know, this is pulling directly from
Civil War battles,
the Civil War battles, and historical gaming. You would say this was the order of battle of the Confederates at that time. Here's the order of battle of the Union Army. Put those units together and recreate that battle.
Right.
And this
so
is exactly what this is.
And that's why we called it future history.
Yes.
But that began to change around the Bad Ab War time. So the Bad Ab War series was 2 books, and those are the ones that are going to be worth some money right now. You're going to have a hard time
really
tracking them down.
The kind of the popularity of the Forge World systems.
It really exploded at that point. But included in that were a couple things. One, Zone Mortalis rules, of which you can find fan-made Zone Mortalis 8th edition rules out there right now, which some of which are pretty good. But also a campaign system. And you saw the evolution of this campaign system through all the releases after that.
Yep.
And eventually ending up with kind of the pinnacle of it in the
Fall of Orpheus.
Fall of Orpheus, thank you. Which dealt with the Necrons and the Minarch dynasty. Here's a perfect example of how that lore works. They added a new dynasty to the Necrons. They're called the Minarch dynasty, and they're all rusted, and they talk about how they are just the most vile of Necrons you could possibly imagine. I mean, like, if I were going to do Necrons,
that'd be it.
Like Minarch you were talking about, if I want to do Eldar, I want to do Mimiara, because that crap, this is the scheme. Like, these guys are awesome. But the campaign system in that one is evolutionary. Because what happens is they're telling you all the lore. They don't tell you what happens at the end of the battle. They basically get to a point where the Necrons are invading this entire system, and they say, and now you decide how this thing
will Orpheus fall,
how it plays out.
And
you now play through the campaign system, which, you know, we've talked about before, but it allows you to decide the fate of the system. And that is just fantastic.
Very cool.
And I've used that multiple times to write my own campaigns and just layered on, the Tyranids instead of the Necrons. And here's the different planets that you fight on, et cetera, et cetera. Absolutely a must buy in my mind is Fall of Orpheus for that campaign system. It is, I will never let that book go. It is super great.
Yeah.
It was just a revolutionary idea that Alan and John and Ed all kind of worked together to come up with, and it works really, really well. You've seen it if you play Horus Heresy Gaming 30K.
Yeah.
You see that campaign system playing out in 30K too, and even iterations on that. But that's where it came. That's how it all came about. So any of these books are worth owning. Bad Ab War alone for just a tremendous amount of color plates and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, the chapters that it introduced and some of the characters it introduced.
The details into some of those chapters and like the minutia of information about them is just fantastic.
You know, if you wanted to hear more about that discussion, where would you go to hear more about it? There's actually an episode of a podcast, I think, where some guys talk about.
There's lots of episodes of this podcast where we talk about each and every single Imperial Armor book. So definitely worth checking out. All right, let's go back to the top of my list, because this one also was kind of one of the things at the forefront of my mind when we came up with this, which is the Planetary Empires as well as Mighty Empires tiles.
Yes.
Yeah. Man, I wish they still made these things.
They don't make those things anymore, but there's a little thing called 3D printing, right?
There is a thing called 3D.
And also there's a board game called Settlers of Catan.
Oh, yeah.
There you go.
But there are a bunch of 3D prints out there that you can do. I own a crap ton of these tiles. I have a fully painted set of them, and then I have like 3 sets that are not painted at all.
Right.
But the rules were somewhat lackluster, I think, in the Planetary Empires campaign.
You just got to dust off that old General's Compendium from Fantasy Battles, and that was like the best map campaign rule.
Yeah, they were pretty good. I mean, there's a lot of systems out there, but go ahead with what you were going to say because I wanted to.
Well, I was just going to say they were a little lackluster. Games Workshop no longer produces these tiles, which I felt is a real shame. It is a map-based campaign where you have hexagonal tiles that you then piece together and make a map. There are buildings that can go on each of the tiles
they represent different resources that makes that area
more valuable or less valuable.
Yeah.
And then each player has a certain colored flag that you would place in that. Now, this was where it broke down because the flags would always break.
Yeah, right.
You know, but you could make those easy enough.
We're in the magnet era.
That's actually a great idea. Except the tiles are anyway. Anyway, the rules were somewhat clunky, but I really, really enjoyed the tiles. I think that there's still a lot of potential use for those in any kind of map-based campaign.
And this is where the internet is your friend.
Yeah. And with the 3D printing capability, I have seen some amazing tiles that people have created that I could just 3D print and add to
so map-based campaigning, especially with hexagons, ain't new.
No, of course not. It's probably one of the oldest.
It's one of the oldest systems out there for wargaming.
Yeah.
And because of that, there are a ton of different systems out there that you can use for map-based campaigns that work great with these tiles.
That is a great point.
And some of them are very well regarded. Some of them have nothing to do with science fiction, and it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Hills, trees, cities, whatever.
And so if you just do a little bit of Google searching, or in fact, I think there's actually a thread on it right now, and I think it's on Independent Characters Facebook page where people have been posting links to different map-based campaigns.
Oh, interesting. I didn't know
there's a thread on that because there's one called VA. I can't remember what the initial stand for, but again, really well-developed map-based campaigns that are out there. People are more than willing to share this stuff, and those tiles are fantastic for that.
Yeah.
And it's fun. It's fun to have it out there and have people contesting them and wanting to fight over them. And if one thing that people do is they start off with all the tiles being blank, and if you take that area, now you have to paint the tile. Right? And so now you really want to keep that area because you painted it.
Contrast paints to the rescue.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah.
I'm telling you, airbrushing that stuff was the dream.
Yep.
Oh yeah, sure.
It was so great.
It just replaced their glazes. You might have to kind of cut it a little more, but yeah.
I airbrushed a bunch of them, and then I just dry brushed over that. And then actually the worst part was painting the edges all black.
Yeah, painting the edges.
It took forever. But yeah, that was actually, I painted that set while I watched the entirety of the series Fringe.
There you go.
Yeah.
Oh.
So got a lot done.
Sure.
Anyway, so a great system. If you can find these tiles or you have access to a 3D printer and want to do quite a bit of printing, you can replicate a bunch of this stuff.
Yep.
And there were like Hive City tiles and all kinds of cool stuff. Then there was a campaign release called Crusade of Fire, which when it was coming out, we were all very, very excited about. And then it came out and didn't get a whole lot of play. But there are a few very, very interesting things in this. It wasn't really a great campaign. And I think part of that, quite frankly, was I think it was originally supposed to be like a Chaos versus Imperium campaign. But Phil Kelly absolutely insisted on wanting to play Eldar. And so they were like, all right, fine, we'll shoehorn Eldar into this thing.
There's always got to be that Eldar guy in the group.
There's always that
They're the
Eldar
worst.
But there are, as you talked about earlier, Adon, in this, there are rules fighting on Demon Worlds, which was kind of reprinted from White Dwarf, which is that's a great system.
That's where it's like crumbling around you and falling apart.
All kinds of different
lava going off, earthquakes,
warp surges, that kind of stuff. With a few minor changes, you can make all that work. It also contains several missions which are really transferable, and then it has like this thing, Burning Skies, which an Arena of Death, which really no longer work. But you could still use the Arena of Death. You could treat it as like a game into itself, as you said, using some of the 7th edition stuff.
Yeah, I mean, like the Demon World stuff, there were things like how you can modify it is, every turn you roll a die, and depending on the result, maybe all psychic powers are either +1 to cast or -1 to cast or +2 to cast, or you peril on any doubles.
Sure.
Stuff like that.
Yeah.
It looks like you found that thread, Adon.
I did. So talking about the campaign-based system, can I jump back for a second?
Please do.
So Jeff Fackler, Fackler, Jeff with a J, came out today. He was working on some Planetary Empire tiles and was asking, hey, does anybody have any good campaign systems out there? And there are a ton of replies. Victory by Any Means is the campaign guide I was talking about. VBAM. Victory by Any Means are on their 2nd edition. Very well regarded system. But in that thread, people have a bunch of links to different systems, and those tiles, they're just tiles. So you can overlay whatever system you want. And there are a lot of good resources out there. Jeff Fackler's thread in the Facebook community is the one that's out there today.
The other interesting thing, though, about this Crusade of Fire campaign was there's a couple things that make it still kind of worth picking up. Like, it is a great resource for ideas. They had a great spread that was like a table of boarding this space station, and it just showed you some different ways you could do.
Is that a spaceport?
Maps and terrain. No, it's a space station.
Oh, station.
You can see it floating.
Oh, I see.
But also the interesting thing was this was a Games Workshop product, not a Forge World product. And within it, though, they had missions using Zone Mortalis tiles and rules.
Nice.
And that was interesting because we hadn't seen that kind of.
And remember, we thought it was going to come out.
Yeah.
Like, oh, they're going to release Zone Mortalis through GW.
Yeah. So this is kind of an interesting book, and it's still worth picking up to this day, I think. It's certainly for ideas and expanding narrative play, that kind of thing.
Because using some of the stuff in there would take a lot of tweaking.
Oh yeah, for sure. And
I'm sure a lot of these books too you could probably pick up on eBay or whatever,
super cheap,
or probably even cheaper is your local flea markets.
Yeah, or go look at the dumpster outside of anywhere Don goes.
Hey,
just throw it all out.
Hey,
at least you'll find the boxes they used to be in, the slipcases.
Seriously.
All right, let's do this. Let's take a short break. Let's come back because there's quite a few other things we want to talk about here. So we'll be right back.
Sounds good.
Hey guys, I'm Caleb.
And this is Kat.
And we are CK Studios. We want to invite you and your friends to come paint with us at one of our exciting and fun-filled airbrush and hobby weekenders. Our weekend workshops are 2 days of intense hands-on training, working directly with and learning from some of the top gaming artists in the industry.
Whether you're brand new to miniature painting or an experienced veteran that wants to up your game, CK Studios has the workshop for you. Our workshops cover everything from learning the basics and building confidence in airbrushing, all the way up to creating that centerpiece model for your army or display case.
For more class info and our upcoming schedule, you can find us on Facebook at CK Studios Come Paint With Us, or register directly at ckstudios.bigcartel.com.
If you can't find a class near you, that's okay. Just contact us and we'll bring a workshop to you.
All right, and we're back, and we're continuing to talk about using old Warhammer material currently. Adon,
as we wander down memory lane.
As we kind of go down memory lane, too. Listen, White Dwarf. I had a huge collection of White Dwarf stuff that I gave to Jeff and regretted giving it to Jeff ever since I gave it to him. Fortunately, I got a collection back. More than I ever had before, even. And I got to tell you, where do you even start with White Dwarf?
Yeah,
I mean,
it's so much good stuff. Even when it was bad, it was good.
Even when it was bad, it was good, right?
And for me, this again goes back to like the classic stuff that like, and maybe it's like nostalgic. Like I was 12 when I read this book or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
But I have some really seriously old White Dwarfs that I don't think I'm going to bring myself. I have plenty that I'd be okay tossing.
Yeah.
But I'd have to look through it. And again, back to that scrapbooking thing. One of my things I've always wanted in the back of my head, spend a day, go through your White Dwarfs.
Yes.
Scrapbook those things, take the articles out and just 3-ring binder them, whether it's like you cut
probably worth doing.
You cut away all the really cool, impressive painting articles, put those in a stack, all the really cool heavy metal.
Terrain building.
So I did this. There was a magazine called Scry back in the day, and they would have like strategy guides for different games and CCGs and LCGs and miniatures games and things like that. I actually did that. I would cut out the things relevant to the games that I played, and I had a binder for each game, and I put it in a sheet protector and stuck it in the binder.
Yep.
Yes, definitely a great thing to do.
I've wanted to throw ever since. Remember you helped me move back in the day, Carl?
Yes.
And I had that whole rolling cart full of all my white dwarfs.
I remember.
And we tried rolling it onto the
And it fell
U-Haul,
apart?
and it just exploded. And I'm like, maybe that's God telling me to throw away 4,000 white dwarfs.
Index Astartes articles go into detail about every chapter. I mean, these are just great ongoing articles about Space Marines, various Xenos races, other factors of the Imperium are amazing. There's short stories by Black Library authors that you can find spread throughout these things. Now I notice they're doing short stories in
fiction,
it again. Some are actually
There's whole
pretty
army
good.
lists,
Yes.
like Andy Horde did the whole Kroot army list.
Yeah.
You know, like you could easily, especially playing narrative or open play, talk with you. If you
Even
wanted
narrative,
to do that
to be
and
honest with
narrative,
you.
build that Kroot army. That'd be awesome.
Yeah. Hey, just
Yeah.
do that and let's give it these stats and go for
Right,
it.
yeah.
But there's inspirational material there. There's conceptual rules for individual games. There's battle reports
Missions.
that inspire, and sometimes they would have a mission attached. Remember
Yeah.
they used to do that? They'd be like, this is the mission we played. Here's
Right.
the battle report. And now here's the mission for you.
Yep.
Super handy. Painting articles that you just talked about, pulling all those aside.
Really good interviews with the artists,
Yep.
with the sculptors and the authors and everything.
Yeah. Specialist games, rules, and articles for things that are still out there. So there is a plethora of material in White Dwarf that is fantastic for inspirational. Now, that being said, White Dwarfs tend to take up quite a bit of room.
Yes,
They do.
And they are heavy when you get them in mass.
Yes.
Yes, they are. That box was heavy, Carl.
Yeah, I know.
And I got those from a guy named Michael Kahn. He was getting rid of them all. I was like, I'm going to get rid of these. Like, I'll take them.
Yeah.
And then I realized I'd flip through things every once in a while, but I never sat down and did the scrapbooking thing because I had the same thing. I'm going to take these. I'm going to take out this article.
It's a lot. That's a lot of effort.
It's a lot of effort. But like, if you were to break your leg and you're stuck on the couch or something.
Yeah.
It would feel really good though to do that, and clear up. I could clear up like a whole bookshelf in my garage.
Yeah. Look at there's,
I know.
all those shelves, and then there's piles over there because I haven't cleared off the shelves enough yet. I think for me in particular, though, they're very valuable because I look at them for show ideas
content,
and that kind of stuff.
Yep.
And so, but man, flipping through old White Dwarfs is
Have you seen the new one?
Yeah.
That just came out.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
There's a section in there where they gave the 2018 Golden Demon winners an assignment. They said, here's what we want you to talk about, witches.
Yeah.
And they said, go crazy.
Yeah.
And Vince Ventrella is one of the one. He's a CK Studio painter, but he teacher, and he also is a Golden Demon winner. And so the one that he has in there with Celestine fighting some Thousand Sun sorcerers.
I saw you post the picture.
I had not seen him do any posts, like no work in progresses of that.
Yeah, I
And
know.
was blown away.
Yeah,
Dude
and,
is so talented.
and the one that I really liked was the one with there was a Sister of Battle
and some Templars, right?
and there was a Grey Knight and a Black Templar Death Watch guy.
And they weren't painted purple and teal.
And
It's amazing.
it was amazing that, I was speechless just looking at that one thing.
Yeah.
But again, it goes to what's available in White Dwarf for use in your current games, because that also has some really cool fiction in there.
Yeah.
And a couple of really interesting battle reports that you can use as fodder for your own games.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, White Dwarf's a hard one to.
It's hard to let go.
It's hard to let go.
Yeah, they are
So hard.
These have passed around from person to person, the ones I have. So, but I have a huge collection of them now that, I keep flipping through for inspiration.
Well, we should do a
for shows.
scrapbooking day.
I don't want to. I want to keep mine exactly how they are. I'm fine. I've got the room there. Don, I think you added this next.
Yeah, well, you
one.
talked about it a little bit, but I just wanted to add in here the one things that's nice about the codexes, White Dwarfs as well, but also the novels, is one of the things we talk about Horus Heresy gaming. It's almost like historical gaming.
Yeah.
So people don't have all these wild paint schemes and all these. You don't have different.
Factions.
Your custom
so-
chapter.
Yeah.
Because the Horus Heresy is basically a historical story, quote unquote.
It's future history.
It's future history. And so, you play those historical battles. Well, you can do the same thing with the current stuff that's not Horus Heresy in 40K.
Right.
And, it might restrict the forces that you're using. You may not be able to use it as an all-comers event. But like we were talking about this a couple times, if you have Space Wolves and you have Thousand Suns, maybe you could do this battle or whatever it is that comes up. One of the things that made me
For sure.
that I was looking at is in the brand new Space Marine Codex.
Yeah.
There is this really neat thing that they did called In Memoriam, where they follow this one Space Marine from the time he's an aspirant through the 10th Company, the 9th Company, the 8th Company, all the different companies that he's in. And in this thing, they have these different battles that he's involved in. And this one caught my eye, which says he was attached to Captain Galenus' 5th Company during the Draken Crusade. This vast imperial undertaking involved not only the Ultramarines, but also the forces of the Adeptus Sororitas, the Astra Militarum, and the Legio Titanicus, and was launched to reclaim Drake's Nebula from the forces of the Word Bearers and the Black Legion.
Right.
And as soon as I read that
section right there,
and I was like, oh my God, this is a great event.
Right. But that's what we've been talking. Yeah. I mean, that's what we've been talking about all along. You look at that thing and you're like, that sounds like an awesome battle.
Yeah.
Let's make that one.
Because I was reading on the plane coming out here today.
Yeah.
And I wasn't reading this to prepare for the show.
Right.
I was reading because it's the brand new Space Marine Codex. I was like, oh my God, this is exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah, that'd be super
It also
fantastic.
scales too. Like some of my favorite from back in the old Codex books, it seemed to me like they might have had more stories where it was like, here's a squad of random Eldari sitting meditating by their jet bikes, and then all of a sudden the call from the Farseer comes in and they hop on their bikes, right? And they're fighting Traitor Guard.
Right.
So that could scale down to like a really cool kill team mission.
Yep,
for sure.
You know what I mean? So it doesn't have to be a big scale 40K, but you read that little snippet of lore and you're like, how can we make this work in a kill team game?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
Speaking of big missions, Apocalypse. Ooh. So 4th edition was the first release of Apocalypse. And this was great because this was kind of shortly after I got into the game, and then they were releasing like, hey,
It was interesting.
Here's the box of 3
yes.
Vindicators, right?
Those box sets
were amazing.
And for some reason,
deals.
he bought the box of 3 and it came with a 4th.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Well, that's why I always just thought. I always just
run
thought
3.
Yeah, you get an extra one.
Yeah.
That would, could you imagine? Could you imagine opening a box? You're like, there's only supposed to be 3. There's 4. Oh my God. I swear to God, honey, I only bought the 3.
And the 4th one he has, and it had a bunch of orcs in the back end of it.
That was actually, that was actually pretty good. Okay, so 4th edition Apocalypse came out. This was the first time it had been addressed.
Yep.
You said it was interesting. What did you
I just remember APOC, I just remember it being so much like many of the supplemental books of just being like, this is going to be awesome. I remember playing our first game and it was like a 5,000 point Eldar versus my buddy's guard army. And, I got first turn and my Revenant Titans just blowing everything. Fundamentally.
4th ed
It
was horrible.
You played like
were
one
terrible.
turn and it was like, are you done yet? Yeah, I think I'm done. You want to play a regular game? Yeah.
Yeah.
we had a lot of fun with 4th ed.
I mean, you had the cool formations and again, you read it and you get so inspired.
Yeah. But we had the same thing. I had 2 Land Raiders full of dudes, first turn, this guy with his Eldar Titan,
Just
totally destroyed like
vapes
over
it, yeah.
700 points of stuff that I never even got to touch.
Yeah.
I'm like, no.
It just took so long, but there was so
The
many
Eldar titles
nuggets
were
in those
broken for that
books that was our first kind of taste at like what would become stratagems.
So not
Yep.
only
And-
that though, they also had like amazing pictures of
Oh,
different
big
battlefields.
time.
The thing that I really liked in that first book was the whole concept they had built like the orcs with the teleporters, and
Yes.
they
Yeah.
had these rules for where the thing that it did for me was opened my mind to
Scratch building,
scratch building because they had like the submarine,
But making
thing
up
at
your
one
own
point.
rules.
the
But
Nurgle
making
Plague
up your
Tower.
own rules
Yeah.
for big missions like this, and how it didn't matter. Like the skies, just do whatever you
Do it,
want,
yep,
right?
yep, yep.
It's super fun. And
Really kind of went full circle back to the old Games Workshop because
Yes.
they very much.
Yep.
I mean, look at Rogue Trader; they had built a marine tank out of a deodorant
right.
bottle and
Right.
whatever.
There was a whole bunch of that. There was a whole bunch of, well, what we decided to do was
Speeders.
we had these teleporters and units could go onto here and they would teleport to a random position. And I'm like,
Right.
dude, that sounds amazing. Like,
Right.
who
Yes.
cares who wins or lose when
Sure.
you got like these goofy things going on that
Yep.
are funny? I thought it sounded like a lot of fun. Agreed. It did take forever to
But the books
play.
were very inspirational. And doing show research, I was looking through those, going, "Oh, I forgot they had this little converted Nurgle Plague Tower.
Right.
Like, I remember that thing
Right.
in Epic. That would be really cool to make."
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
And and I didn't even
I
know
got
about
stuck in it.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, that's the first time that I saw these huge dioramas of just massive models.
and they had the huge fold out
the fold out pages.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And
yeah.
I didn't know that there was a Warhammer World place where they had these things.
Yeah, neither did I at the time.
And at the time, I just didn't know it existed. And so see these pictures with these huge, amazing layouts. It was like, oh, this is so cool.
So those books, as you hear us just talking about, are still absolutely inspirational.
Yep.
If you have ideas for apocalypse battles, if you have ideas for layouts of tables or silly rules or that kind of
crazy
thing,
mission ideas,
still valuable.
The 6th edition ones was awesome.
It was much better.
Oh my gosh.
The concept of the disaster tables and those kinds of things that sped up the play.
Yes, it did.
Because things started happening that you just started removing models from the table.
Yeah.
If you're GMing a game.
Yes.
Yeah. As a Don would do.
Right.
It was super helpful to have somebody running it and driving everybody. One of the things that frustrated me with the 4th edition, I played at a store one time, and it was like I was playing Tyranids, and everybody had to finish their turn at one time, so they had to have time limit on it. And I'm trying to get people to hurry because I'm like, we got to get to the assault phase, and we never got to the assault phase. So like my Tyranids all ran forward and then just got gunned down because I'm like, we skipped the entire assault phase because we ran out of time. I'm like, this is so stupid.
Yeah.
I'm just going to
I
go.
remember running those events, and it was just pain,
it's just
pain
chaos.
and suffering.
And not the good kind of chaos. It's just a mess.
No, it was bad.
But yeah, 6th edition added a lot. And again, I think that book is valuable purely for ideas, concepts, and mission ideas to add.
And Justin's right, that's where we started seeing stratagems and those kinds of things being really, really an important piece.
I just saw them in City Fight first, but
Cities of Death. They were in Cities of Death first.
Yeah.
But in Apocalypse,
they got blown up here.
Right. In Apocalypse, they actually had cards.
Yeah.
They had these black cut corner cards that you had.
Were terrible.
Yes, they were really
They were terrible.
But it was the idea of having these extra game piece that you could use. Yeah.
Yeah. They were just terrible because they were like really flimsy paper that they were printed on.
And they were hard to read.
They were totally hard to read. But for the inspiring photos, for the mission ideas, for the alternative ideas that you can play out for games of Apocalypse that even work now.
Yes.
That Masters of Disaster table was the greatest thing ever.
Yes.
Even though some of our orc players got very upset when what do you mean everything takes a strength 4 hit? And, and they were just having to remove tons of models.
Well, that's why we had to prep people. If you bring a lot of infantry, stuff is going to die.
Now, I will say, I felt like infantry was almost useless in Apocalypse a lot of the time. So you had to have rules where they were not.
Yeah.
But
the current edition of Apocalypse.
Again, so now we see that it makes a lot more sense. And you can't get just blown off the table first turn. Well, you can, but
I can't wait to try that.
At least you get to do your stuff.
We need to try that new system.
I know. We're setting up a time for it. But what they also did, in addition to this, was they came out with, during 7th edition, Apocalypse War Zones.
Yes.
And I really wish they had continued this because I really, really like these books. There was 4 books. Apocalypse War Zone, Damocles, Pandorax.
Pandorax, that was awesome.
That was the one that came with the special edition box that you would buy too.
Yes.
It was like a different version of it, but I mean, it was a different binding of it.
Yeah.
But
I love the Pandorax one.
Veldor and Damnos.
Damnos, yep.
And these all had a different theme. So like Damocles, as many may know, is Tau versus White Scars. So they have unique rule. All of these contain unique rules for the various war zones that took place in it, new unnatural disaster tables, and new missions. So you had like this huge variety of missions, and they were fairly small hardbound books. I think they're maybe 96, maybe.
Yeah, they're about the size of the older Xenos codexes.
70 pages long. Yeah. Now there's clearly things in them that are no longer useful, the formations, that kind of stuff. But
the tables and all the other stuff.
There's a ton of other stuff in there that's very useful. Pandorax had Grey Knights, Dark Angels, and Chaos Space Marines, primarily Black Legion.
I also like the novel that went around.
Yeah, it's not too bad. Veldor was Aldari, although they were Eldar at the time, and Tyranids. And then Damnos is Ultramarines versus Necrons. Yeah. So, and we actually, Aaron and I played through
that one.
Yeah. So honestly, these were really great books. And if you can track these down, I think they're still worth owning. From just some of the visual stuff to, again, the missions to the stories that took place there. Yeah. Now, I think that most of these, I think all of these have been covered by Black Library as well. So if you want to read even more about those, all of these have Black Library books associated with it. And in the case of Damocles, I think the Damocles Golf books, there's like several of them that deal with that. So really...
Is it called The Fall of Damnos?
Fall of Damnos. Yeah, they're the Space Marine battles book.
Right. Pandarax, I really like that one.
Yeah. So, I mean, from an apocalypse standpoint, I think that if that's the kind of gaming you want and you like the new apocalypse, these offer a lot of lore and things that you can still use towards that.
That's really cool.
Super easily. And then we have specialist games, right? So there is still a lot of lore here. So for example, Battlefleet Gothic is one of the things I listed here. The game is still playable. We did an episode on it.
We did.
We found the rules to be a bit dated. Some people still love it. I know, I think Jody and Brian were playing a game recently. Brian's been repainting all this stuff. I find it hard to get motivated to go play it right now.
I do as well.
But a lot of people
update it, please. Games Workshop.
It's going to happen.
It will.
It's on.
Give them
list.
3 or 4 months,
years. It's on their list. I know it is. But so we'll see that. But here's the thing. Like the rule book for this speaks specifically to the Gothic War.
The lore behind this,
and tons of lore with the Black Legion, with Abaddon bringing the
fortress.
Yeah, what's the fortress called?
Blackstone Fortresses. Yeah,
and
there's a lot of in-depth stuff in there.
There is a ton to read about this. So from a lore perspective, it's very fascinating. For playing the game, honestly, like every now and then it's probably pretty fun to break out. And in the campaign I'm running for the Patreon stuff, there was a Space Hulk last month that kind of came into the system, and people could fight for that Space Hulk to get bonus points, and they could only play certain types of games on that Space Hulk. And one of the games they could play were Battlefleet Gothic games near the Space Hulk, kind of vying for control of it. They could play that. They could play Kill Team. They could play Zone Mortalis. There was something else, but those were the only types of games they could play on the Space Hulk itself. Space Hulk. That was the other game they could play.
There you go.
So I mean, there is value to this game, even though it's older
and not in print,
anymore. There's value to Inquisitor, the game Inquisitor, which we're going to be doing an episode on very soon. There is a ton of lore here, and this launched stuff like Eisenhorn. And those kinds of things. And actually, the very interesting thing is John French's book about what's the Inquisitor he's covering? I'm trying to remember the name of him. He started out here too.
Rabner?
Nope.
No. Oh, the
guy with the mounted gun on the arm.
Cannon. Yes, I've read those books.
I can't remember his name. I can't remember his name off the top of my head. But he's in here as well. And I didn't realize that. He was a character in this game as well. So it's really, really fascinating. And there is a lot of lore and history here. And we'll talk more about this game in an upcoming episode, a very soon upcoming episode.
Give me an excuse to paint that Eldar Ranger that's been sitting in my bits box for 28 years.
The interesting thing about this game, as you'll hear in the episode too, is that the scale for the game doesn't really matter.
That's true.
In fact, they talk about how units move, and they're like, oh, they move 2 meters per movement.
They break
point.
it down to inches,
and then they're like 2 meters in inches is this, and 2 meters at this scale is this, and 2 meters.
That was always the problem with the game, the scale. Yeah.
So it works on any scale. It's designed to work at any scale. So it's actually pretty interesting. So we'll be doing a bunch of that and a bunch of Inquisitor 28 stuff soon.
Sweet.
Epic. I mean,
yeah.
This is.
I never actually played Epic,
battles.
But it was. People love it. Absolutely love it.
Again, there's lore included with all of that stuff.
And I guess they kind of brought it back with APOC.
Yeah, so that's kind of a really interesting point.
It is kind of epic. Yeah.
That it uses a lot of the fundamental rules that Epic had, and
the
now
blast
you can
markers
see those within Apocalypse. Okay, so I mean that's just kind of touching the surface of stuff that I have. I didn't even go back to stuff like Rogue Trader and those.
So this is kind of like the anti-Marie Kondo episode.
Almost.
Don't throw away your stuff because it's all really valuable.
There is stuff worth throwing away, like no doubt,
Yeah.
right? Like 4th edition codexes. I mean, yes, there's some stuff in them,
tear out
but
the
most
rules.
of that has all been reprinted, like the lore stuff. So there's no point in keeping that. That was back when codexes were all black and white. Remember, they were just black books that were all black and white.
All little 3rd edition little pamphlets.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm not saying to hold on to everything. I'm not saying to hoard everything. But what I am saying is that when a new edition comes out, it doesn't invalidate everything and every aspect of everything.
Right.
There is still value to some of these things, and they are still worth delving into. If you have the space to store this kind of thing.
That's the big thing, yeah.
If you don't, what's the place that they do all the crafting done?
Coral Palms Resort.
Yeah, just go to Coral Palms Resort.
Have a crafting
I hear the folks
weekend.
are really nice there. Have a crafting weekend. Cut out what you want to keep. Throw it in 3-ring binders.
Yes. And missions.
Well, no, you have
We're not sponsored by the Coral Palms
No,
Resort,
yeah,
by the way.
you have some buddies over. You have some tea, and sit down and take out the different scalloping
The best part
scissors
would
and cut
be
out the borders.
If we go there and we're playing, and the people there start knitting hats for like Justin's Eldari.
It looks like most of them were quilters, actually.
He's got a little.
Make me an
Little
Eldari hat.
muffins.
I want a sweet cone head.
Actually, when I was playing Bolt Action and Flames of War, my mom made me tank slippers to wear.
Nice. Nice.
I actually wore them at the game
They're
store.
shaped like tanks.
Yeah.
Nice.
The show's taking a dark turn.
So my point here is that new editions are not something we should fear, right?
No.
New versions of our codex, especially you Space Marine players out there, should definitely not be fearing this new version of that codex.
No, don't fear it at all. It's so good.
If I got a new Death Guard book, if I got a new Chaos book, the new Chaos book came out, 3-4 months ago? So 2 months ago?
It's longer than that, but okay.
No, the newest one.
the newest one?
The newest one.
Is maybe 6 or 7 months ago now.
I work too much. You could put a new one out tomorrow that had half of what's in that new Space Marine book, and I would buy it, and I'd be okay with that. So you have to weigh that out too.
I'm really hoping
I want warband rules.
I'm really hoping they take the approach that they did with Chaos. Like that would be
Yes.
really, really nice. I mean, if there is an army out there that could kind of use that, Chaos is that army.
Yeah.
It would be nice.
We'll have our time.
It'll come. Like, listen, I'm still having a lot of fun with that codex as is, so I'm going to be getting blasted off the table with stupid Space Marines now.
I want to.
It did
Space
give
Marines.
us a few benefits too, though. The charge
did.
stuff we get as well.
It did.
Yeah.
So that's kind of nice.
It did. And Grey Knights too.
I love the little cheeky response. Well, they're Space Marines. Of course they get it.
That's right. So anyway, my point there again is edition changes, new codexes, these are things we shouldn't be fearing in this game space. If you bought into Warhammer 40K, you've already bought into the fact that there are iterations that are going to happen. Nothing lasts forever. If it did, we wouldn't be playing this game anymore.
Right.
If 5th edition was where this game stopped, I would be done. Like,
Yep.
I really wouldn't be playing 40K anymore because I was super bored with it.
Towards the end of 7th, I was like,
And we were
was
playing Age of
getting
Sigmar towards the end of
burnt,
7th
dude. Yeah.
edition.
Yeah.
So it's great to refresh these things from time to time to keep us engaged. And yes, we do have to spend more money to get involved in it. I don't like spending money just like the next guy. I got bills to pay too.
Yep.
But nobody said the hobby was free. It's not. But there's a lot of value to holding on to
Yes.
certain things and getting that extended life out of them as much as you can.
Yeah.
Big time.
And those mission books, Imperial Armor books, I will never let those things go.
Oh, no.
Never
Those
let
things
those
are works of art.
And I'm missing one, and I'm thinking about buying it. And I was looking online at how much it is. I'm like, I should just drop the money on it and get it now before it gets worse. So, yeah. So that's where that sits. So,
Nice.
I think everybody needs to keep their head up and realize that we're in the golden era of 40K.
and
It's so good.
crazy thing about that is we have said that so many times,
No, it's just the best. I've been playing since 2nd edition.
but
And there
I
was
remember-
editions where I was like,
remember-
I'm kind of getting a little frustrated with this.
But I remember 6th and 7th edition, we were like, there's so much stuff coming out. Geez, this is really the golden age. Like, we were saying that 5th edition, 6th edition, 7th edition. But now it
we
really
didn't have
is.
like that Games Workshop, like it was like that total open closed circuit. It was like a total one way
Agreed.
situation, and now it's just like
It's
we're listening.
It's incredible. It is incredible. I have an idea for an episode coming up too that we'll talk about too, where we kind of address some of that and
Cool.
get your feedback on that, Justin. So,
Sure.
if you want to come back, we'll see if we extend your contract too.
Sounds good.
All right, we're off to Nova Open next week.
We are, yeah.
I'm excited
Come say
about
hey.
I'm
Come
off to
say
the
hey.
wedding.
All right, well, you enjoy the wedding.
Yes.
We'll send you pictures from Nova.
I'll have a new daughter when you guys come back.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
And Kim feels really the labor was super easy.
Yeah, right. No, we saw the bills.
So you commission painted this daughter.
It's actually going to cost us more out of pocket than having the baby in the first place.
Yeah, and then you never know, Don might be a grandfather. So.
No, hold your tongue.
So we'll be at Nova Open. If you're out there, please look for Justin and myself. Jody will be out there too.
Jeff will be there.
Jeff will be there. Wait,
the entire CK
Studios. Jody's not going there. Jody's going to Adepticon. He's not going to Nova.
Right. Entire CK Studios cast
CK
and
Studios
crew
will be out there. Yeah. It's going to be a lot of fun.
And it's not too late to get an $8 ticket for that Warlord Titan.
Oh my God,
that's right.
$8.
Do it quick,
and you could win the Siege of Heaven and be the happiest person.
Or don't, so I can win it.
Throw $8 in that one.
Oh.
I put money into some of the other ones.
Just buy one ticket, people.
Totally worth it.
Or 10.
Or don't, so I
one.
can
Could
win
you
it.
imagine winning that for $8?
Dude, oh
Yes.
my God, that would be the best. Shut up, Adon. You can throw money into it.
I've thrown a lot of money into it. That's why I keep saying don't buy the ticket so I can win it.
Oh, never mind. Ignore everything Justin just said. Adon,
And I'm so excited to see it in person for the first
it's gonna
time.
be exciting.
Yeah.
So we'll be there. There's gonna be probably I have a lot of travel coming up. I'm trying to squeeze in another episode before I go into travel mode, but I've got that going. I've got Nova Open coming up. I've got going out to Warhammer World. I'm going to be in Belfast for work, and then I'm going to Warhammer World for 3 days. Then
What's it going to be like your 7th or 8th time out there?
something like that. I've lost count.
Yeah.
And then
It's crazy.
and then I'm coming back and taking my kid up to college up in Seattle. And then I come back and
busy
it's
Carl.
Geek in South. So I've got a very, very busy September.
There's probably Maui in there squeezed
There's
in there
not.
somewhere.
We canceled Maui for Australia in next summer.
Oh, nice.
Good problem.
We'll see if I can afford it after sending my kid to this school. That was while we were going to Humboldt. And then, then
Now
we're
you're
going out
out
of
of
state and
Yes.
it's doubled the cost.
Yes.
So, I'm hoping to get another episode in there. I may squeeze in something small if it doesn't look like we're going to be able to do a full episode, that kind of thing. But bear with us, as September is going to be a very, very busy month for everybody around the independent characters. I'm hoping to maybe do some recording at Nova Open as well. So we'll see if
sure.
Dan Boyd is willing to bring his
awesome.
roadcaster out there. That'd be fun.
awesome. Yeah.
So, okay, let's take a short break. We'll come right back, close out the show.
If you're a true follower of chaos, enjoy killing Tau scum, fry devilfish for breakfast, drink the blood of fire warriors, collect the bones of Kroot fodder, desecrate the cockpits of mantas with demonic sigils, sing songs of chaotic praise and joy, when berserkers chain X overwatching broadsides, Helldrake Bellflame shield drones into flying discs of spinning fire, and just all around bask in the path to glory, then the Shrine of Chaos podcast is a must-listen for you. I'm Mini Wargamer Dave from MiniWargaming.com, and I invite you to be a champion of chaos. Listen to the Shrine of Chaos podcast, wherever podcasts are downloadable. Thank you, independent characters, for allowing this message from the Eye of Terror.
All right, so we're back. We're closing out the show. Do you guys have anything to really add to kind of where we sat at the end of this?
No, I'm just charged up for all this
excited.
stuff, going
Yeah.
back and looking at stuff. I mean,
It was fun.
Yeah.
It was fun to go through it.
Yes,
and
yeah.
kind of, oh yeah, I forgot about this or I forgot about that.
Yeah. Makes me want to run events again.
Made me
I
feel
bet it
old.
does.
It made me feel like I've been in this hobby for too long.
When are you going to start running events out there?
No. Well, I'm running Warhammer Underworlds this weekend on Sunday.
Yeah. When are you going to run a real event? Like,
The people who are doing 40K out there have been doing it for a while. You know, Tyler and Robert. And
so they're already
yeah,
set.
they're
for,
set.
That's
They're doing
perfect.
stuff.
You could take
but
a break.
most
from
of their stuff is like more competitive kind of stuff. It's
Right.
not narrative.
You should
kind of thing.
throw out there doing a narrative thing.
I don't know. I don't know if people want to come to do that.
See what
We'll
you
see.
don't know till you dip your toe in
That's
the
right,
water
yeah.
and see. Maybe
Because I
run
don't have enough to
Apocalypse.
do. Yeah. Well, they did it at Desert Sky.
Oh, okay.
People seem to really enjoy it, but they just did it to try the rules.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So you got anything you want to add? You're just tired.
No, I'm good. I'm good.
We've all had long days. This is
long
a
days,
week.
long work days, but
I'm
no.
really looking
CK Studios on Facebook. Go check them out.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Please
Absolutely.
do. Yeah.
Yep.
We'd
They're-
love for you to
they're,
come.
And you guys are
Their
doing
with
schedules
us.
is up.
New schedules up, tons
the-
of classes
through the end of the year.
with all the guys, Sam, Vince, Caleb.
I've already
coming
signed
to
up for the Phoenix
city
class.
near you. I saw that.
It's nice.
It hadn't even been posted yet, and Adon's like, "When's the 101 coming?" I'm like, haven't you taken that like 3 times now? But
Once.
It's a refresher.
A refresher. Never
Well,
hurts.
and Caleb's changed it since I took it.
A little bit. Yeah. That's true.
So,
He did.
Yeah.
He's added quite a few little tweaks.
The instruction booklet is a lot different too.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a bunch of little fun things.
Adon, what are you guys covering next? Lords and Heroes, you were saying?
Yeah. Monday we're getting together. We're going to be covering
right.
meeting engagements.
Meeting engagements.
It's
1,000
points.
games.
1,000-point game. So it's the
I'm in.
It's the journey into the mortal realms, right?
Yep.
And the detours along the way. So that we already covered skirmishes.
Yep.
And the next step up is meeting engagements. We're going to be covering meeting engagements.
Nice. So if you're interested in Age of Sigmar, check out Adon and Justin there. That's why they were fired from here.
The truth comes out.
It's out.
I don't care. It's out. Oh my god, that's a great running joke. Okay, yeah. So we love iTunes reviews. Please leave us reviews on iTunes. It's great when you give us like a star review, but
Like a 1-star? Or a
give us what you think we deserve.
Absolutely.
That's what I would say. But I would love it if you could leave a text review as well. Those are phenomenal. Most reviewed 40K podcast out there by a long shot.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
Nice. It's amazing what happens when you're positive and you actually talk about stuff you enjoy and you're happy about it.
I think the excitement wears off on people. Like, I know when I listen to people like having a good time, like when I listen to you and you're like laughing about something, like I can tell
It's
like
genuine.
that comes
and
through.
it's-
Yeah. We have a Facebook group. Adon, you want to talk a little bit about the Facebook group?
Facebook group is awesome. So the Facebook group is very large, 4,900 people. It's a lot of people, but real positive outlooks that people have on it. People are posting some great ideas, great stuff. If you ever feel like, oh man, is this truly art? Just search for the name Jeremy Wood.
Big time, yeah.
And you will see art like you would not
I can't wait to see that Warhound Titan.
He's the eternal elite choice. But anyway,
Yeah, right.
It's a great group of folks, really good conversations, people keeping it positive.
Yeah,
Awesome.
Don, there's been a member reported content
I know.
group right now. I just saw it.
Oh, no.
No, but we do have,
but we
people-
address it.
Yeah, people see stuff that they don't think is quite
And we
quite
evaluate
great.
it.
We'll evaluate it, and sometimes we go, you know what? No, we're okay with this. The conversation is going well. Sometimes things go off the rails, and we address it.
It is important that it stay moderated
Yeah.
and that kind of thing. So we have actually quite a few members in the group. Like it kind of surprised me. I hadn't really, I don't pay attention to numbers anymore.
Yeah.
So when I saw it like today, I was like, oh, there's more in there than I realized. There's a lot of clicking going on. We've clicked accept like 4,900 times is what that means.
And deny about 4,900.
Yeah.
Answer the questions.
Yeah, answer
It
the
ain't
questions.
hard.
If you have friends that want to join this group, don't just invite them to the group because they don't get the questions and they will just be denied like outright. That doesn't mean they can't reapply.
Right.
But what you should just do is tell them, hey, you might want to be a part of this group, join, but please make sure you answer those questions because if there are no answers in those questions, we just automatically deny it. I don't care if I even know the person. I'll just automatically
It's
deny
just,
it.
it's too much work.
It has
otherwise.
made our life so much easier. And to be honest, like we're not racing for numbers. We don't care about the numbers. So if you can't commit that little tiny bit,
Quality over quantity.
It's Carl with a
Nailed
C.
it. Yeah, it's Carl with a C. We've seen Carl. Listen, my name rarely gets misspelled. Adon gets misspelled.
Let's not even go there.
You just must live in that world of no, it's not Adam. It's not Adam? No. Adon? A-D-O-N? No. It's A-D-A-N. A-D-A-N-N?
It's Carl with a C. So moving on.
Super easy. All right. Is that a sore spot for you? I think you're over that by this point.
Forever.
I get called Carl Turtle all the time. That
Yeah,
doesn't bother me.
actually, the most common one I get is Aiden because it's such a popular kid's name.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And so,
You can blame the Ring movie.
anytime
for
I
that,
go, anytime I go to Starbucks, I'm always Aiden.
You're always Aiden.
I always come in as Aiden. Yeah.
Just go with it.
You should just tell him.
What the hell?
It's always fun to walk into a
You
place.
left out the I.
What's your name? Legolas.
You right? Give them a name that throws them off.
Abaddon.
Right?
Let's see him spell that one.
Bruce. I usually
And
just
then
go with
hear how
Bruce.
they pronounce it, and that's the way it's supposed to be pronounced.
That's right.
Boom.
Oh yeah, right. Yeah.
Let the Starbucks baristas decide for us. So we have the Facebook group. It's awesome. We hope the people there are enjoying it. But if you want to be even more involved, we do have a Patreon going on. We have several levels for the Patreon. We have a $2 level, which gets you, into the drawing for being a sponsor for the show each thing, and gets you our appreciation. But where it really starts to shine is at the $5 level, where you get access to our Discord server, as well as an extra episode of the Independent Characters each month, which usually is just myself and one other member, occasionally 2 other members, kind of testing out new ideas, talking about White Dwarf and other stuff that's going on around 40K. It's always 40K.
We're always innovating around here, trying to keep it exciting.
We're always trying new things. So that would be the area where I test out a new segment to see how it hits. But the Discord channel is surprisingly very, very active, more than I expected.
I can't keep up with it.
I can't either. I tend to scroll. Oh, there was a bunch of. I'll scroll all the way to the bottom here, and then I go back and kind of try to read it. But all of us who are on the show can be in there from time to time, so you can tag us and talk to us, and we chat with people frequently.
I think somebody even mentioned that too, like they're new to the community. Like they posted their first thing, and I think all 8 of us or however many
are like, oh, hey,
hey, and like feedback, and they're like, that was kind of cool.
I mean, that's the point, right? The whole point of the show
part of our group
was, to make people feel like a part of our gaming group, and lo and behold, these ideas, some of them were Jody's, at that level as well, since you have access to that Discord channel. What that also does is when we do live shows on Twitch, sometimes we pipe people right in and talk to them and have them give their opinions on these Warrior Lodge episodes and stuff. It's a lot of
all
fun.
Hail that new board that the Patreon's made possible.
Right.
If you are listening to the show and you are not a Patreon member, you're still benefiting from the fact that we have a Patreon, because you're hearing clear voices, you're hearing clear audio. We've done some video stuff as a result of it. We're going to be doing more soon.
Video stuff.
Fortunately,
too, right?
Josh is a video expert, so he's going to help me out with a bunch of that stuff. We got some ideas there. We got ideas with Dave from Mini Wargaming. He wants to do some video stuff with us. So a lot of things coming up that I think are going to be a lot of fun.
Cool.
And not only that, I'm dropping a lot of sponsors from the show, not because I don't love them. I do. I love KR Multicase. I love Wargamma. I love those guys. The Patreon is kind of covering all that, and I don't feel like I need to inundate you guys with advertisements when, we got it covered. So that's great. So you can thank the people who are participating in the Patreon for that. There are a couple ads I'm going to continue to keep. I'm going to continue to keep Table War, because Doug and Todd and I are all really good friends, and I really like their business, and I really want to support them.
Hopefully CK Studios.
And they've been very supportive of us.
CK Studios is still in there. And as you heard in this episode, Dave from Mini Wargaming, we're friends there, and we want to help him out.
Sure.
And, he's a great dude, and he and I get along great. So, but they're very short. We try to keep, we give a 3-hour, 4-hour show with 3 minutes of advertising content. I don't think that's too much to ask. So, but the Patreon is helping that. And then at the $10 level of Patreon, you get access to not only all that stuff from before, but you also get access to our global campaign, which is ongoing and still raging like wildfire.
Yes.
So a lot of cool things there. You can check us out at patreon.com.
Sure.
So I think that's it. You guys done?
We're done.
We're done. Okay. All right. Hey, you? Me? No? Yeah. Okay. Him. Okay. So until next time, this is Carl.
This is Justin.
This is Adon.
And we're coming to you from the Astronomicon, where everything old is new again.
And one man's motif is another man's master of a forge. Great podcast, by the way.
And the echoes of the past can lead to glory.
Thank you so much for joining us. We will see you next time for episode 194. This episode of The Independent Characters is protected by the Creative Commons license. If you have further questions as to its use, you can find information on the front page at theindependentcharacters.com.